10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2.
Drag racing fans, what's up? What's going on? Let's pull it in. Let's get everything ready. Put that pre-stage beam on, and let's hit that bottom bolt and get another episode of the Competition Plus Power Hour started here tonight. First off, I want to thank all you guys for sending in all those questions for the Pit Insider, Jeff Arend. We will be getting back to you guys and answering some of those questions tonight. I know my co-host had a lot going on here before the show. He was on the Caruso's, Drinks with the Carusos, whatever you want to call that show. But Lee, how's it going, man?
Man, it's good. I already had the drag racing conversation going over there at Talk with the Carusos or Cocktail with the Carusos or Carusos Live, and was talking with Wes Buck, Amanda Busick, Jericho Baldoff, and Chris Powers over there, and looking forward to, I'm going to bring up the image card so that everybody can see it. But man, we have got one of the hottest stories in drag racing right now, Austin Prock getting to pinch drive for Clay Millican. We're going to be talking to him later on. And then the ticker is covering it up, but I'll let everyone know, you know who he is by that image right there. Bret Kepner. He is on the living, breathing drag racing encyclopedia. Sam, I count him as a legend in drag racing motorsports media. I cannot wait to talk to him. I wish we had a sit down setup for him and just go all over and all out on drag racing, his career, his time in it, what his thoughts on the past are and what his thoughts on the present and future are. I'm sure we'll have him on again, but I'm excited for every show, but this one I think means a little bit more, frankly.
Definitely does. But Lee, we got to get something out of the way here. I know you probably have a drink over there, so I need a little Red Bull in my system. So last week was Monster. This week is Red Bull. Shout out to anyone out there that's interested in sponsoring the Power Hour. Lee and I are available. So if you're interested in doing that, you can always email us at powerhourcp@gmail.com.
Sam.
What?
I've got what? Stan has said wrong side. So let's switch
it and we can start the show all the way over.
Yes.
What's up, everybody? Your man Slammin Sam back at it again, and I am here live on the Competition Plus Power Hour. So let's pull it into the stage and beams. Since that burnout didn't work, we are going to do one single pass, and now we're good to go. Yeah, that burnout didn't count. So
yeah, we muffed the burnout, and we're wondering if it's going to get in reverse now.
Man. Speaking of that, I mean, Krista Baldwin, unfortunate situation there for her.
Which was round one against Austin.
Yeah. So, who knows? We can say lucky break for him, anything like that. So, just so much. We're sorry again for, being on the wrong side. You know how it is when you wake up on the wrong side of the bed. Things just don't go right.
That's right. So, that's right. Well, man,
start the show back over.
Let me say this with Krista. I think it just says volumes for that young lady. Look, she didn't get to make her run, and she qualified again. And yet she gets out of the car, and she's excited. She just did a burnout in competition, in NHRA, in a top field dragster on the biggest stage. And how refreshing is it for so many people that, frankly, I think they've got to a point, maybe to some extent, they think they just ought to be there and they belong there, and they're missing out on what the privilege and honor it is to drag race at the pinnacle of drag racing in the entire world. And she, can't back up, can't put it in the beams, and she's like, I'm here, I'm doing this. That's so refreshing. How can you not like Krista?
You can't. But even when she's like, most girls dream of laying out their wedding dress and everything like that. And she's like, I saw it on her social media. She's like, here's my shoes, here's my, race suit. And, it just speaks, like you said, it speaks volumes of how happy she is all the time. Rain delays, and I actually am uploading a video kind of now as we speak, kind of rain delays, since it keeps happening. I did a video in Houston when I was there, rain delays. So I thought it was kind of fitting that we had so many, come up. But Lee, man, 4 questions right now, 4 questions, 4 emails got sent in. So Bobby, sorry, but I don't think we can just send one person a t-shirt this week. Ooh. I think, for this, I'm making an executive decision. So if this comes out of my Christmas bonus, we'll talk to the Grinch later about that. But Bobby, you got to send 4 t-shirts. So to those 4 guys, Scott Malpass, Brad sent 2 emails. So he only gets 1 shirt. And then Sammy C, they all sent in some great questions for the Pit Insider. So I'm happy about that. But man, what a busy weekend for drag racing. I mean, for me being at home, I got to flip back and forth. I mean, from No Pep Kings to PDRA racing, trying to find out what's going on there, NHRA racing. I mean, it just shows when you can have 3 different events going on and the fans are still packing the place. It just shows volumes of what drag racing is, what we are becoming, what we're evolving into. I know you said you talked to Wes, but he is a very good ambassador for the sport of talking all of it, where some people only talk one side of it. But I think that's the great thing about you and I, Lee. We can diverse and, bob and weave a little bit into all of it. So, I mean, I don't know, we got some fans out there. What do you guys want to talk about? Lee, where do you want to start?
Let's start with Stan. He brings up an interesting situation. So Tasca had that electric Cobra jet out there at Norwalk and was making several runs. He set a world record for a full-bodied electric car. And I don't know whether the last run was televised or not, but after he is lost to Cruz, Petragon, in the funny car final round, I guess Tasca just I want to hit the track one more time. And the conditions were good. They get the Cobra jet out there. Dude, the wheelie bars were folded up as much as they could have been, and I think he was touching the bumper. That thing wheel standed so high.
You want to know why? Even though it's electric car, you want to know why? What? What's after electric? Just tell me what's after electric.
What's after electric?
Yep, in the comment right there. You can read. Electric
Ford.
Exactly.
Right.
Standing on the bumper every time. Let's go.
Dude, look, I understand folks are like, it's just, I want the noise. I get it. I love the sound of drag racing. I love the sound of motorsports. I love the sound of a shuttle launching. I got to experience that, or a P-51 going by. Music to my ears. But it is impressive what this machine can do. To answer Stan's question, will they allow the Tasca Ford in factory stock? Right now, I would say no. I don't think the NHRA wants any more parity issues in factory stock whatsoever, because the Fords went out and won again in factory stock. So I'm sure there's already been emails sent in Constant Aviation factory stock that they got to have some rules coming down the pipeline. We'll see what happens before their next event. But Stan, I don't think that's going to happen just yet.
I think maybe I look short in my image because I want you guys to see all these beautiful hats and the whole ambiance. I think that's what that question was too. But hey, I got another thing, not to just mention that. But if this is the Doug Winters, I think it is, pro mod driver, we need to get him on the show. And if not on the show, he needs to come on my show, because, man, is that team... See, we're going to talk pro mod. Let's just go to pro mod really quick. Okay. The pro mod class, the field, man, watch out, beware. I'm enjoying it. I really am. And I think there's some people, we talked about it last week, that said they were going to show up at another race but took the weekend off. Not going to mention any names or anything, Ricky. But, even in the PDRA, you want to talk pro mod going back and forth, There's so many good racers right now. Like, let's just say no. PDRA, let's give them a pass for a weekend and have all those cars show up and run all together. I want to see a full like weekend of pro mod racing.
Man, it would be stellar if that could happen. If like every car from the Midwest drag racing series, every car from the guys with pro mods out west, ADRL, everybody would just suck it up and say, you know what, we're going to do run what you brung, kind of like a funny car chaos style event, and get together and have a door slammer blowout. There it is. There's the name right there, Sam. Door slammer blowout.
See, and we invited Wes Buck on the show because you were talking to him earlier, but that's where I wanted to go with that. Like, let's find, I know Florida's the destination place, but let's find like a common ground, like somewhere neutral where we can just get everyone together and just say, look, dude, we're going to do this. Like, do it and make it a mega cash days or something. I don't know. Who knows? Like, $1 million to win. Like, we do it in all these other classes. Let's just do it, make it happen. And I just want to see that many pro mods. Like, if you have one and you're out there, get it to a racetrack. Like, start racing it. Sell it to somebody that wants to race. Sell it to Bobby. He'll let me race it.
I think pro mod at Norwalk is another great example of how competitive overall NHRA drag racing is right now. Still looking at just pro mod. But I would say some of the normal players weren't there at the end of the day. You had people and different names at the end of the day that we're not usually talking about. And I think that's great for any class. And man, I'm sorry, if you are out there right now and you are finding something in the competition to complain about, how can you? Did you see the final round in Top Fuel, the final round in Funny Car, the final round in Pro Stock, the final round in Pro Stock Bike, and not just Norwalk, but it's been Epping and Atlanta and Gators? There has been stellar racing across the board.
And there totally has. And Terry brings up a great point, and that's like, we need a big dollar pro mod race. And not saying that what Wes Buck has going on is not a big dollar pro mod race, but it's true. We do, like, every class. I think at the end of the year, the off season, I've been saying it. Let's run all-star races. Let's do this. Let's do that. Let's have a full out Top Fuel big money race. Like, somebody on the horn. I don't Yeti coolers right now. Yeti, I'm calling you out. I don't mean to really be calling people out, but Yeti, get with it. Like, we need a big money race for Top Fuel. We need one for Funny Car. Funny Car Chaos is a great example of what can be with that. Pro Stock, we have Wes Buck's race. He's doing that. There's so many different things that I think we should try and mix up with that. And I think that's the way we kind of, as a Wes Buckism, so we're going to have to drink to that, even though I'm drinking, but move the needle forward. You probably heard that about 5 to 10 times on the show earlier, but that's what we honestly need to happen, is to continue to do things that shake it up a little bit, but at the same time, give people what they're asking for.
Right. Hey, Adam Dobbs, a Competition Plus photographer, even mentions Jose Gonzalez, big crash a month ago to a new car and wins Norwalk. Yes, congratulations to Jose Gonzalez. What a turnaround for that team. What a feel-good story. Let me move on from that. And Sam, Cruz Petragon.
Wait. We got to go back. Before we get there. No, fine. Let's go. And then we'll talk about the number one qualifiers and everything. So Cruz, that's huge. That is huge. Earlier in the year, got to talk to Cruz and got to hear some of the things he was talking about. He said, give him 5 to 6 races. I mean, he said that on this show. Give us a little bit of time so we can get together, and it's proven. That's what he asked for. He asked for a little bit of time. And now look, we're 7 races in, 7 races in, and now he's already making his move. Now, like other people would say when someone won their first race, oh, he's back on top. Let's not make that claim yet, but I like to see that. I mean, you're having John Force win a couple, you're having Cruz win one now. So, I mean, who isn't it's not one of those things when Cruz Pedregon wins when people are like, okay, whatever. No, everyone, general census around drag racing, everyone is happy to see Cruz win just because of who he is, what he's done, and just the example that he showed in this sport over the years. You know, his longevity in the sport, being with sponsors, with Snap-on as long as he has. He's shown, you know what, if you stick to it, if you continue to keep going, keep going and keep up at that pace, or maybe that conversation that he had when, oh God, now I'm forgetting his name. Stevie Ray was in his pits telling them that, Stevie Ray would whoop up on him. Maybe that gave him some insight. And he says, you know what, let me show him that I can still win one. So, I don't think anyone can be mad or is upset about seeing Cruz get that win.
Right. And I'm sure it meant so much to him. He's not one to talk about retirement. He's not one to consider that end of his career. He wants to stay out there and continue drag racing. He's done it at the highest level for so long. He's won championships literally in two different eras of nitro funny car drag racing, and had been in a slump for a while. It'd been 3 years since since a win. It's been a while, and they're able to pick it up at Norwalk. And look, they make a semifinal round appearance at the Gator Nationals, if I remember correctly. And I believe there was one other time they get past round one, and the rest they've gone out in round one, even though they've qualified fairly well. And you could see the performance and that switch of bringing John Collins on and that crew that was with Tommy Johnson Jr. Oh, this is making an impact. And he even goes so far to admit that maybe the driver wasn't where the car was. And he's worked on that. Cruz, just since the last event, has changed how he's strapped in the car. They've got chin straps. I went by and talked with Caleb Cox, general manager there at Cruz Pedregon Racing, and they've got like aiming lines now for Cruz to look through, basically to help him drive that car even more. So he's doing what is necessary to go out there and win again. He is a extreme competitor, and he wants to be in the talk with Force and Tasca and the Don Schumachers. And look, we got to get Jeff Arend on. I definitely will do some more talking about Funny Car because, man, I don't think people are talking enough about Tasca. The man's leading the points, extremely consistent, 2 wins already, and yet we're not talking about him. That's not right.
I don't think it's not that we're not talking about him, but I mean, hey, there's just everyone gets mad that we're not answering these certain questions or why aren't we talking about this? There's just so much to talk about. Like, if you guys saw my notes, I have 2 pages today of I have a full page and then I have a notepad and then another notepad that I've been like, okay, I want to talk about this. And I was writing stuff down while I was watching the races. I mean, just so much to talk about. So many stories, like you said, so many stories that have not been told. And I think NHRA is seeing it, after you were mentioning talking with the president, he was seeing that kind of stuff. So there's just so much to talk about. But yeah, we can take a break, bring on that special guy that got a different sponsor since it wasn't Coors. They got a new hydration company on that car. But yeah, let's take a break. Let's bring in the pit insider and see what juicy stuff he's got for us.
Folks, Competition Plus Apparel. Remember, you can even get nostalgia replications of T-shirts at Power Competition Plus Apparel. Those T-shirts being Scotty Cannon. Go get them now. Go get your Competition Plus Apparel. And let's get Jeff Arend on.
Get your CompetitionPlus.com apparel today. Whether it's our nitro-burning funny car design or the vibrant door slammer design, we have the swag to show you are always in the know. Get yourself a hat too. And we know not everyone enjoys wearing a mask, but if you must wear one, at least wear a good-looking one. Check out the new CompetitionPlusApparel.com for the latest from the place where you have trusted for your news on the internet for over 2 decades.
I was walking through the staging lanes and I was getting photos of people that don't usually have any photos taken of them, like other media people and crewmen. And I see the jeweler and I go up and I take the photo. I'm going to tell you what, he's such a photogenic guy and people don't realize it.
Oh, man. Did your camera work after that?
Probably not. He had a special Snapchat filter on there.
I had to make some adjustments, but it did work later on.
Nice. All right. So, yeah, Norwalk race. I mean, before we went to it, you look at the weather forecast for there, and it looked like we were going to be bringing canoes and swimming there, you know, because it wasn't looking very good. But, you know, lo and behold, thank God the weatherman was wrong, and basically got the whole race in, all the qualifiers in, and just had a little delay before the semifinals. Great crowd there, definitely on Saturday for sure, and some really good racing. I mean, as you guys were talking about, one of the big stories, obviously, Cruz winning for the first time in a few years, winning on a whole shot too, which is pretty badass. And you know, Cruz, you know, you love him or hate him, and people either love him or hate him. He's a world champion. He's been doing this forever. And, you know, like you were talking about the helmet strap deal, which I don't really understand why a guy that size never wore a helmet strap. Those cars are hard to see out of anyway. And he's a big guy, so you can't move stuff around, as we talked about before, in a funny car. I mean, the drive shaft's where it is, the motor's where it is, and the roof of the car has to be where it is. So that's where the roll cage is. You can't make it any lower or any higher for a big guy. So glad to see that he's, you know, is a good world champion guy, still working on his driving, still working on getting better. And it was kind of cool to see him win there. You know, he won on a whole shot. And then you look at Torrance and Erica, both winning on whole shots as well. Erica keeping Greg Anderson from getting his 97th win. So I'm sure it's going to come sooner than later, that's for sure. But Erica's, she's a badass driver and always good on the tree. And her car seems to be running a little bit better right now. Then Austin Prock, you know, you've got him on later on. And, you know, I've got tapped to drive some people's cars before last minute, and it's all the cars are a little bit different, and you know, sometimes it's pretty tough. You just have to hop in this car. You don't test or anything, and you go make a run in it. Like, you know, Jim Head's car definitely had some stuff backwards from other people's cars when I drove it, and you really got to focus a lot. But you know, we ran like 398 on the first run, and I think a lot of the spectators or people there don't realize we don't get to go make test runs in it. You hop in and here's your job to go to the finish line. And that's what you got to do. And Austin's a very accomplished driver. He's done really well. He came through Frank Hawley's and was a star student there. And he hopped into a car that they have some stuff going on there that no other Top Fuel car has. I mean, this car does not have a burnout stop in it. It does not have a clutch stop on it. And, you know, I read some of the people talking about stuff. Burnout stop, these late model drivers, you know, guys who drive big show stuff, they can't even do a burnout with a stop on it. Like all these other guys do it. I've driven about every kind of car, and it's easy to do a burnout in a, you know, super gas car, a pro mod car, an alcohol funny car, a nitro funny, or a nostalgia funny car with no burnout stop. Now, a big show car, the deal is like the idle checks are way higher on them. So the amount of pressure that's in the fuel system that you have to crack open with the pedal is way higher than a normal car. And then, you know, like, let's say like a nostalgia funny car, which is probably the closest thing to getting there. You could push the throttle down half an inch and not over rev it. You know, if it goes a little bit high, you just ease up a little bit. They're kind of like an alcohol car when they rev up. The Top Fuel car, you go like an 1/8 inch too much, that thing's going 10,000 and blowing up. So why they don't run a burnout stop on that car is beyond me. And I think we saw that earlier in the year when Clay was at a race where he went to do a burnout and rolled out of the water, and the RPM just never came up, and tires dried out a little bit, and he wasn't able to get in the reverse after, which is pretty common because the clutch gets hot. So I was watching Austin, and I saw him do a burnout, and I went, man, that thing sounded like 4,000 RPM burnout instead of 6,000. And one of my buddies was standing there, and he goes, you know, they don't run a burnout stop or a clutch stop. I'm like, I have no idea why you wouldn't do that. A burnout stop just makes the RPM the same every time, and it's way easier for the driver. As far as the clutch stop goes, if you've driven it for a while, they're not too bad. And all a clutch stop does basically is when you stop from the burnout or when the car is idling, you push it against like a solid piece, like a bolt or a stop or whatever, and that gives you the perfect clutch clearance, you know, in your clutch pack in order to shift it between forward and reverse. If you don't run a burnout stop, if you push on the pedal too hard, like over center they call it, it'll actually re-engage and start going. And if you watch some of the old videos with cars backing up and all of a sudden they start going too fast and they ran in the guys behind them or into the tower or whatever, that's what happened. Like you start freaking out if your car's going too fast or something's wrong. So you just push the clutch as hard as you can because that's what you're used to, and it actually re-engages harder than if you let it out. So, back in the day, people didn't run a clutch stop because they wanted to rev their car up on the starting line. Like nitro cars in the old days would rev it up to 3,000 or whatever on the starting line to make it go. Well, if you had that much stall on the clutch or that much clutch setting the way it was, your car wouldn't roll forward if you just took your foot off the clutch. So you would over-center it by not having a clutch stop, and it would re-engage the clutch and allow you to move forward to stage or whatever you want to do. So again, why they don't do that, I have no idea, but Austin really stepped up there in a car that's probably totally different than anything else he's ever been in before. And he did a great job. They're going to some questions now. So my buddy Slammin Sam there gave me these 4 questions with like 2 minutes before the show. So the first one is from Scotty, and he had a question about rear steer in cars. Now, nitro cars, which I'm more used to, we don't really run rear steer. A funny car will put more weight on the right rear. And if you ever look at a normal street car, what happens when you floor it is the right rear tries to go up, like the axle tries to spin up. And that's why if you have a one-wheel peel car, it always smokes the right rear tire and not the left one. So we'll put a little bit more weight on the right rear to make the car leave straighter. As far as rear steer goes, that's more of a thing in a Pro Stock or a Pro Mod or radio versus the road car or something like that. I'll have to look into that a little bit more. I think they're a little backwards from what a car with no suspension is. So we can come back to that question, but it's definitely a good question. Sammy had a question about Top Fuel Harleys, if they're going to be out there more often. It's more of a question for an HRA, but Top Fuel Harleys I love. I mean, it's a great exhibition class. Again, I don't know if you could have them come out more often. A lot of these guys that have the Top Fuel Harleys actually have real jobs, and so they're a crew. And people don't understand, it's just like, hey, we want to have them go to 10 races. That may be a possibility, but the travel expense and just the time off from work makes it a lot harder. So at the moment when the Top Fuel Harleys are there, I relish seeing them. They're so cool. Those guys are badass. Anything you have to put on a Kevlar vest on, because the blower's like underneath your chest and could blow up and like go through your chest. Those guys have, bees of steel, you know what I mean? So I like that. He also talked a little bit about Bristol being later in the year in Pomona and maybe swapping them. But, because we're going to end the season in November, with Pomona as it's looking right now, I don't think he could really swap those two. He was concerned about lack of performance maybe in October in Bristol. But, for the most part, when the tracks get cooler or the air temperature is cooler, you're going to run better. So there's actually more traction when it's cooler outside. It's definitely more difficult to get down the track without shaking, but you'll see some better performance there. And next we have Brad. He asked about header angle on funny cars. And for the longest time, it was just a standard angle that we had. I guess you would call it like a 32 degree or whatever. And then they let us go to 58 degrees. And when they were at 58 degrees, man, they were way harder to drive. The header angle made the cars faster. That was back, I think Cruz actually did it way before anybody else, and nobody really figured it out. But then Jimmy Prock, when it went back to that 58 degree header angle, it just shot the car out so much faster. It was like pretty well 1/10 of a second different than the standard header angle that you run on a car, which would be the 45. But the cars were very hard to drive. It was hard to keep the front end on the ground, which I think is good because you should be able to drive really good if you're a pro driver in a funny car. But then they move it back to, I think it's right now it's at 50 degrees. And it slowed the cars down just a few hundredths maybe, but made them a lot easier to drive, more downforce on them on the front end, where the front end doesn't come up as much. Last question, I think it was from, if I can read my writing, which I can't, but it was Top Fuel versus funny car. And I get this question asked a lot. Why does a Top Fuel car run quicker than a funny car with the same drivetrain, but the funny cars run better mile an hour? And the basic reason is a Top Fuel car, you have the engine in the rear end, basically. The engine's over the rear end, so you have tons of traction. So you can hit it with more clutch, more power, more everything, get accelerating better. But then when you get to half track, a funny car is actually way more aerodynamic than a Top Fuel car is. So the funny car is going to pick up more mile an hour in the back half. And that's why you see funny cars regularly over 330, and the Top Fuel cars are more in 320s, now and then 330, but most of it is aerodynamics. So the Top Fuel car is definitely quicker for the first half of the track. They'll run like 290 miles an hour, but maybe 320, 325 at the finish line. So they only pick up like 35 miles an hour in the back half. Where funny cars, really good ones like 285 and then 335, so they're picking up more like 40, 45 miles an hour in the back half because of the aerodynamics. So I hope that answers all the questions for everybody, and keep the questions coming because I enjoy answering them.
Looky there.
Finally,
Hey,
some questions.
Jeff. I know. Hey, did you get any beer this week? Did anybody bring you any, ice cold Coors Lights?
I was working pretty hard this weekend. If you were in Norwalk, like the water grains there were like 122 or 3, and I was dehydrated. So probably staying away from the Coors Light, at least the track, was a good idea at this particular race.
Definitely. Look, Jeff, I got a mission for you. I just wonder if they're doing something different over there at the Don Schumacher Top Fuel Dragster camps compared to anyone else. Corey Mack had an issue on a burnout, throttle stuck. Happened to Tony Schumacher at St. Louis, and happened to Leah in Norwalk. And she idled all the way down, shut it off, throttle hung. So do some investigative reporting for us. Figure out what's going on over there. Because, I mean, they're like the only ones I've seen that happen to. And it's happened, in my opinion, close enough to where it's like, that's strange.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that. I know Krista Baldwin had the same thing happen. She can get it in reverse, and actually DSR is helping her with their tune-up and setup of the car. Leah's, I heard, I'm pretty sure it was Leah's. I wasn't on the starting line, but all of a sudden the idle was way high. And what happens is, like on these cars, you only run like 40 or 50 thousandths of what they call pack clearance in the clutch, right? So there's 50 thousandths is not very much. Well, if you go to do a burnout and it doesn't do a burnout properly, or the tire gets dry and it just revs up, you don't see the tire smoke, then the clutch swells up. And it takes that 50 thousandths of clearance away, and there's no way to get the thing into neutral no matter what you do. So, again, as we talked about Clay's deal, not having a burnout stop increases those odds, like, 99% of that happening. Why it's happening with DSR cars, I'm not sure, but I got a couple of good contacts there, so I'll look into that for you.
All right. Well, man, look, thank you for being on. Thank you for the inside information as always. We got to let you go. We got to bring on. Oh, what we got?
He's got to answer this question. He's got to answer this.
All right. Let me take a sip of beer first.
He is sponsored by Coors Light, by the way.
Yeah.
So, do you plan on driving for anyone this year?
Yeah. So, not really ready to say the name yet, but I've got a friend of mine that's raced Top Fuel cars for a long time, and they're building a funny car right now. It's going to be a quality piece, and I'll probably go to a couple of races for sure, I think, towards the end of the year. So I'm really looking forward to that. I've kind of kept my license current. I've tested a little bit for Alexis DeJoria last year before Indy, and then this year at the beginning of the season when she couldn't make it. So I've got some good friends that have recommended me, and I really enjoy I love to race, but I love sorting out cars and helping people with funny cars and stuff. And I've made so many runs that if it's on a run and something goes bad, I have an idea it's gone bad way before most people would, and I can lift and save the money. And that just comes with experience. And I'm really looking forward to getting back in the seat and making a couple national event appearances later this year.
Well, you look forward to seeing that, Jeff.
Yep. Well, thanks, guys. Great show.
Your suit has to say down the leg, the jeweler.
I don't think so. I'll get some. Maybe I can go to the store you buy your underwear from, and they might have some that say the jeweler on the store on the side or something.
Oh, man.
I'll just keep that for you, bro.
Jeff, thank you, sir.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good show.
Folks, we're going to take a break right now. Right after the break, Austin Prock is live on the Competition Plus Power Hour.
In the race for quality, there is no finish line. Jerry Bickle Race Cars is a one-stop chassis shop for drag racing performance parts and race components. For over 50 years, Jerry Bickle Race Cars has been an essential part of racers' plans for building world champion race cars. Our parts department is stocked with every part a racer might need. Log on to jerrybickle.com for more information. We build anything with doors. jerrybickle.com.
And the man with all the buzz around him in the Summit Racing Equipment Nationals pits, Austin Prock. How you doing tonight, man?
I'm doing great. How are you guys?
Doing very well.
Lee, take it away with the first question.
Say it again, Austin.
I said I'm still trying to come down after this weekend.
Dude, look, so I've been to a lot of national events this year, and the only one so far I've missed is Houston. And you've been, as far as I know, at every one of them. A lot of people, I think, misunderstood the announcement. You're still very much a part of JFR. You're still very much there. But I will say, I've noticed you. I've been watching, and there hasn't been quite a pep in your step. But that was completely different Saturday morning when I walked by you and said, "Man, you're getting back in a hot rod," and you were like, "Yes, sir." So you definitely, I can understand why you've definitely got a high about it. Look, let's kick off with this, and I want to know up front what in the car when you got in it was like, "Oh wow, this." Clay does this. I am not used to this.
Well, first off, I sat in the thing and I barely fit in it. Clay, he runs a very short foot box, probably about 8 or 10 inches shorter than mine, I'd say. So I was in there real crammed. Being comfortable in these cars is half the battle, especially when you have your own car. You want to make it just how you like it and be comfortable, and that's how you're going to be the quickest. Well, this was obviously a different scenario, and I had to deal with it and make it work. So that was the first thing that caught my attention. And then once I figured out how they ran their program, I was like, oh, boy, I haven't been in one of these cars in 17 months, and you're going to throw this at me on top of all the pressure, So it was a little bit of a learning curve, but everything went smooth. All the way from, starting the car, you pull the fuel on, you have to trim it out, it's got a race pack on the dash. My car didn't have that. I had to monitor the fuel pressure, the RPM. I had to charge the clutch cannon before the run, after the burnout. After I backed up, I had to roll into the pre-stage beams, pre-stage. Then I had to pull the fuel all the way on, let the clutch pedal out, fully stage, and send it down the track. So that was probably one of the most nerve-wracking things, was just making sure that I remembered to pull the fuel all the way on and charge the cannon, because if I didn't charge the cannon, the thing wasn't going to leave the starting line. It was just going to blow them off. And if I didn't get the fuel all the way on, we were going to have a whole bunch of shrapnel in the grandstand. So definitely didn't want to do either one of those, but everything worked out, and we had an excellent weekend.
No, and an excellent weekend you did, but let's just dive kind of right into the story and what everyone wants to know. You hear about it in the stick and ball sports. Oh, this person got called up. They received the phone call. What was it like when you're getting asked that question? Hey, you want to come drive this car for us this weekend? Like what go through that mix of emotions, getting that, question asked and everything.
Yeah, so Friday morning, I just woke up as a typical blower guy. Went out to the racetrack. We did our duties, made a nice clean pass with my dad and Robert Height, and after the run, I was servicing my supercharger, and I look over and I see Doug Stringer standing at the ropes, and I'm like, that's kind of weird, head down back to work. Look back up about 10 minutes later, and he's still standing there. So I motion him in, and he's like, hey, what's your restrictions on driving? And all I can think of is like, oh man, like what's going on, And I'm like, I don't know. I can go ask my dad real quick and run it by Force and Robert. So run up, I tell my dad, hey, I think they need a driver over there for this weekend, and he's like, well, I'm all for it. You got to ask the boss, but he said, you got my good graces, and have a meeting with John and Robert. We all agreed that I could go do it, and we'd get my brother over to the racetrack the following day to fill my position building the superchargers. And it was just unbelievable. I couldn't comprehend it. Someone like Clay Millican and Doug Stringer believed in me enough to come drive their race car. That was a super cool feeling. It was one of those dream calls talks that you always want to have. So definitely very cool to get that opportunity and go out and showcase some of my talents.
And showcase you did. Decent race day for everything that went into it on a Saturday, getting to qualify it, and wonder if we would have any runs on Saturday itself. Could you dive in for us what was going on with Clay in particular? Yeah, I looked back at the run from Friday night. I was filming it. I was helping Terry Haddock's boy get some footage for his documentary that he was doing that Clay was asking him to do. And yeah, you could tell Clay wasn't driving that well. It veered off, and then it kept veering even when he got off the throttle. So he was having some issues. So can you give us the details on what Clay was going through?
Yeah, so Clay, he had a week prior, he started to have some symptoms of an ear infection, and was battling that, and got up to the racetrack on Friday, and he was feeling decent, but not 100%. And he made a pass, and when he stood on the gas, he said he got dizzy. And when he lifted, he noticed the car had veered quite a bit and was like, oh boy, something's definitely, not ticking right. So he went to the hospital, got all checked out, and he had made the decision prior to going to the hospital that, it just wasn't safe for himself, the competitors, the fans, to go out there and, risk something in case something bad happened. So he said, I was the first person in mind, and he knew I was out at the racetrack already. It could be a quick, easy, transition. And they decided to throw me in the car, but he's doing much better now. Went to the hospital, got all checked out. It was just an ear infection that was, interrupting his equilibrium. So he said he almost felt drunk. He's not a drinker, but he said he knows how his dad feels nowadays.
And talking about that, there was a great picture of you standing at the starting line, taking everything in with the race suit on. Is that experience totally different from working on the car, now standing there and racing? Did you take it in a little bit different, or was it just you at the starting line?
Oh, absolutely. That it takes a totally different mindset to work on one of these cars where to drive one, So I was just taking it all in. Like I said, all weekend, it was a dream come true, and I had been waiting for that moment for 17 months. So to be up on the starting line in a fire suit, studying the racers, studying the track, that's what I love to do. And, I just had an awesome weekend and was happy to be there. And, I'm still on my adrenaline high from it. I've already watched, I had the races recorded and qualifying. I already watched both of them twice, and I'll probably watch it all week.
Hey, Sam, who took that photo that you're referring to?
Some Yahoo that probably is wearing a yellow shirt right now.
Yeah. I snuck that one in. I'm surprised I hadn't got the email from the NHRA on that one. But yeah, I snuck that one in.
Yeah, I think I saw that, but I think it was right before I got interviewed by Joe.
Right, it was right before. As a matter of fact, I snapped it right before a cameraman got in my way from Fox, so I just barely got it. But speaking of that moment, I'm like, hey, he's actually in Clay's fire suit. So did everything fit right, or were you, kind of, like, oh wow, that kind of impinging me right there. How did it fit, man?
Yeah, no, me and Clay ended up being the exact same size. On Friday night, we stood by each other and, sized each other up from our knees up. So I'm a little bit heavier than him. I'm about 25 pounds heavier, but his fire suit fit perfect. And my ass is a little bit bigger. So it had me scrunched in that cockpit a little tight. But other than that, we're all the way down to our shoe size. I even wore his boots that weekend because I didn't have mine with me.
Man, one of the coolest stories in drag racing, I think, honestly, in a long time. And I can't remember the last time someone stepped in like mid-race and did what you did this weekend. I mean, sure, there's been driver fill-ins after a race going into one before the event. I honestly cannot remember the last time something like this has happened. So, yeah, we'll definitely be talking about this for a while for sure.
Yeah, this will definitely be. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Austin.
This will definitely be a highlight of my career for a long time. And, man, it was hectic. Like, even, rolling up there for Q1, Mike Klober gave me some strict instructions on where to shut this thing off. And I hadn't driven one of these things in 17 months. So you sit out 2 months during a typical off season, you're about 300 feet behind this thing. And he said, send it to the stripe and shut it off in between the ET cone and the mile-an-hour cone at 1,000 feet. So I was definitely nervous. And it was a wild ride. I really got a new respect at how fast these cars are when you sit out for that long and strap in it and go straight down there, 326 mile an hour first rip out.
Yeah, so definitely now when you're packing your bags to go to races, or maybe when you find a moment in the trailer, you better put your fire suit and your shoes and everything in there for these situations. You never know what's going to happen, right?
Oh yeah, I carry everything with me, but everything I was carrying was for a funny car because I'm supposed to do some testing in John Ford Racing funny cars this year. So the boots are different spec, regulation on the fireproof of it. So everything that I had, didn't really transition over, but I have my helmet with me, gloves, and all that. So I'll make sure I throw my Top Fuel stuff in there for this next race.
Gotta have it all.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, you got some fan questions right now, so we'll ask this one. How does it feel to work for your dad on Robert's car?
I've always dreamt of working with my dad, obviously in a little bit different scenario, hopefully one day with me driving, but I love working with my dad. In my opinion, he's the best out here, and it's a great opportunity for me to come out here and learn for a year. You got to take the good with the bad. So I've been having a blast, and I think he feels the same way. So it's been a lot of fun. I've learned a lot. We're working really good together, trying to improve our blower program and our supercharger program. We're going to be running the dyno all week this week and trying some new things. So hopefully we can learn a little bit here going into Denver because you're going to have to make some big old boosts there to make this thing run.
All right, Austin, you talked about testing. I know you've done some testing for JFR, talking about continuation of testing for JFR in the funny car. Well, I mean, you got John Force over there. You got Robert Hyde over there. What are the goals of putting you in a JFR funny car to give information back? What's the thoughts behind that? What is the team expecting in those moments?
Overall, just to get some seat time for me, just to stay fresh, and I might have screwed that up this weekend because I sat out for a really long time and didn't seem to miss a beat. But, just to stay fresh, I love driving the funny cars. That's where my heart's at. And, hopefully I'll get to drive one here soon.
All right, you got two more random fan questions. So the first one is asked, what is your favorite thing to cook right now?
That's a toss-up. I kind of cook whatever I'm feeling. Typically, I don't go out to eat much just because of my culinary background. I'm kind of a hard judge on most restaurants. But yeah, whatever I'm feeling, I love to cook Mexican food, and probably my favorite thing to cook is like Asian cuisine. So those are probably two of my favorites that I do most.
Lee, I think I just got an idea if you know what I'm thinking. When, we get to a racetrack soon, maybe we can steal Austin and, either have him cook, or we can take him in Vegas to our new favorite hotspot to try the caramelized bacon.
Yeah, the bottom bacon, as I like to say. Well, as he mentioned, though, he's pretty hard on restaurants. So what was the name of that place in Las Vegas? Gato de Chow or something like that. Yeah. Brazilian Steakhouse. What do you think about Brazilian Steakhouses, Austin?
I think they have one here in Indianapolis. I've been there. I actually really enjoy that place. I love a good steakhouse. So, I definitely be down to try that with you guys. And I'd also be game to cook for you. I think I could serve something up you'd like.
Yeah, I was going to ask, with everything else in the bag now, like, are the utensils there with you too to cook for JFR? Go ahead and get that out of the way as well.
Shoot, I'll flip that. I'll flip it with a 7/16 wrench if I have to. I'll get her done.
I like that. I like that one a lot. So yeah, here we go, Lee. There's a perfect media opportunity. We can, steal him away, drive somewhere, get a pre-reaction and kind of just film the whole thing of him, talking about racing and good cuisine. I mean, you can't go wrong with that. Another question here from Stan. It says, did you hang out in Clay's pit the whole weekend, or did you run back to the JFR pit? How was that? I mean, was that an awkward situation, or did you go back and forth a little bit?
I went back and forth a little bit. I had a lot on my plate. I needed to focus on the job at hand. and that was doing a good job for Clay Milliken and Doug Stringer and that whole Parts Plus team. So I check in here and there and make sure they were doing all right, and check in with my dad and talk to him about what was going on with our race car and his race car, because at the end of the day, I felt terrible that I had to leave the team, and but at the same time, it was an opportunity that I couldn't miss out on, and I think a lot of good's going to come from it. It got a lot of good reaction from the fans, TV ratings, and social media. My social media hasn't slowed down since Saturday morning when they released it. So it was definitely a double-edged sword. I love working with those AAA guys and Robert Height and my dad and Cunningham. So I went over there a little bit, but a majority of the time I stayed in Clay's pit and just focused at the task at hand.
Yeah, folks, I can attest. He definitely did stay over there and hang out, and he looked good in his Walmart crew T-shirt, repping the colors over there at Stringer Performance. So who was the man that got to step up to working on the blower over there at JFR? Let's give a shout-out to that guy.
Yeah, so that was my brother Sam. He's a general manager at John Force Racing, and he's worked on these cars for many years prior to moving into that position. So he's done a little bit of everything on the cars. And Friday night, when I found out that all this was going to go down, I called him and had to ask a pretty big favor, to leave his family and drive 4 hours the next morning to come, cover me. So kudos to him. I definitely owe him a nice steak dinner.
Sam, man, look at that. That's some love right there. Hey. That's some dedication.
Hey, I didn't want to tell anybody. I didn't want to tell anybody I was doing that, Austin. You shouldn't,
Cat's out of the bag now, man.
Everyone knows. Yep, I work on blowers also. It's like I am not the Sam that he's talking about, but that's cool, and that just speaks volume of you guys as a family, you guys as a team, that they're willing to say, hey, you have an opportunity, go and do it. And for the JFR racing team, like you said, you felt bad because that's where your heart is. Even though you want to be in a car right now, you're locked in a role where that's your responsibility. So it just speaks volume as you as a person, and then the team and the group you guys have over there, where they feel comfortable letting you go and do something that you want to look forward to, and believing in their team that they have someone that can step into the role and still do a great job. But I gotta ask, you got a pretty nice setup back there behind you. What all do you got going on back there?
Yeah, so behind me, I got a back half of a funny car and a Christmas tree set up. That way I can practice my reaction times at home. I got my pedal set up exactly, and steering wheel set up exactly how I would sit in a funny car. All the same measurements just to, stay comfortable. I got an iRacing rig behind me that I probably should use more, but it's been awfully busy here lately being on the road. So, just live, eat, breathe, and sleep racing. Here, I'll give you guys I'll let you check it out. I got the funny car chassis there, Christmas tree, and then got the curve monitor, little iRacing setup. So love to run the stock cars on circle track and kind of go back to my roots.
Well, folks, this has been an episode of Competition Plus Cribs with Austin Prock. Man, so on iRacing in particular, I know you said stock car, so narrow it down for me, because I'm on iRacing. I hadn't been on a while myself because of the road, just like you mentioned. I as entry level as they are, I love the street stocks. They're so much fun, on iRacing. What do you love the most? Absolutely.
Right now, my favorite's probably the ARCA car. Just because the tires wear out so fast, you have to be real conservative, especially on those long races. And I like how I've never driven an ARCA car, but I feel like it's probably pretty accurate because those cars are real heavy, and just kind of chasing the tire and being smart early. You can go out there and rip quick time off in qualifying, but once that green flag drops, you got to back off about 4/10 to save your tires throughout the whole race and see who lasts the longest.
All right. Have you seen ARCA brakes on YouTube with you mentioning ARCA? I've got to ask that.
No, I haven't.
Dude, check out ARCA brakes on YouTube. You will thank me later. It is hilarity and calamity on iRacing involving ARCA. It is spectacular.
Okay, I'll check it out for sure.
Yeah, Austin, one final question here from Stan. He goes, did you see any trade secrets in Clay's pits? I don't know if you're going to tell, if you saw anything that's like, man, why aren't we doing this? Maybe we should try this. Did you see anything, or were you kind of, had a million other things on your brain and not looking at that kind of stuff?
They have their operation runs totally different over there from what I'm used to. And I really enjoyed watching, how they do things and learning from Clay and Clover and all of their crew guys. But there wasn't really a lot of these cars. They have a very similar parts and pieces, you would say. Most of the, tricks and trades are in the bell housing, which I didn't check out anything in the clutch and, up in the crew chief's head, which I can't see in there. I can only ask so many questions. So not much different. The most I learned was from Clay and Mike. They race completely different and they're very old school, which I kind of grew up that way, but I've never raced that way before. So it was really cool to learn. And those are some lessons that I'll keep in my back pocket as I go through my career.
Well, Austin, I've got one last question for you. Again, thank you for being on the show tonight and you being the hot story in NHRA right now with what happened this weekend. I think everybody wants to know whether they've typed it in or not. I'll ask the question that's got to be asked. What's it like working for John Force?
His interviews are just like it's like working for him. He's absolutely, as much energy as he has as his interviews. That's how he is 24/7. So it can be a lot sometimes, but at the end of the day, it's a great place to work.
There you go. Well, man, I hope that you are in a car regular full-time again soon. And hopefully that's even within this year. We hope we see it. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for making your first appearance on Competition Plus Power Hour. We appreciate it, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me. Hopefully I can be a regular on here, get back in the seat, and we'll have some more cool stuff to talk about. So definitely taking you guys up on dinner, and I definitely will cook for you guys one of these days.
Ooh. You say the place, you say the track. Bobby will pay for us to get there, and we will be there.
Yes.
Sounds good.
Yes. Thank you, Austin.
Thank you.
He doesn't know how much I can eat. That's the only problem.
Hey, and he doesn't know that I'm still working out, and I put on some LBs, so I got to shove more food in my mouth than I did that. Hey, I put it like this, Lee. If you thought I had the meat sweats before, if he's gonna cook and we're going somewhere, oh boy. But hey, before we go any further, Lee, we didn't really get to talk about that much to start. But how about these number one qualifiers? Greg Anderson, 6 number one qualifiers this year. Steve Torrance, Steve Johnson, and Ron Capps. That's a huge list. But then when you go over to the winners this weekend, whole shots. But what about that motorcycle class? We know how, Steve Johnson and Matt Smith, they kind of are best friends right now. How do you think that was, pulling into the staging lanes and saying, yep, we're about to take this on head to head. Here we go.
It is everything that pro stock motorcycle and drag racing needs. It is. It just is. I was so glad that was the case, and the rivalry can continue. Man, look, I just don't understand how anybody can complain about the competition right now at NHRA drag racing and in PDRA and other areas of drag racing. It's so good right now. So many good stories. And speaking of good stories,
we're about to have the encyclopedia, the knowledge book, going back to the great book of them all after the Bible. This guy has the knowledge. Break to this commercial. Go and get some smart sanitizer, wash those hands, clean those ears out, because you guys are about to find out any and everything you guys want to know. Put it in the comments, because man, oh man, buckle those seatbelts. and lean those tray tables up, lean those seats in the upright position because we're about to take it to a whole new level. Lee, break to a commercial.
Folks, right after the break, Bret Kepner is live.
Huh? No. Oh.
Bret, how you doing tonight?
It was a hell of a build-up. I certainly appreciate it.
Well, man, look, I know Sam has got to feel the same way. I know I count it as a distinct honor to have you on the show tonight and to be talking with you. As a kid, I can remember watching ESPN, IHRA drag racing, and you were the man. And look, I don't ask this that often as a host, but it being you.
I'm straight.
But it being you, I've got to say, man, what do you want to talk about? Because you're the man.
No. It's just the opposite. It's your show. I'm only here to be your puppet. You, whatever you ask, you do what the hell you want. I got no agenda.
All right.
Man.
All right. Well, look, we'll start out this way. I had the honor to be at the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame dinner. Chip Lofton, strutmasters.com, was nice enough to get me a seat, and you were inducted into that esteemed hall. Rehash for us your thoughts on being inducted into the International Drag Racing Hall of Fame.
I don't know if it's actually possible. I was really, really shocked when I got that phone call from Garlitz, and that would have been Labor Day of last year. I did not know that I was on the ballot, and therefore it was really goofy when he called me up. And one of the first questions I asked was why. You know, obviously there's a trillion people worthy, far more worthy than me, to be in that group of people. To be inducted into any Hall of Fame is an incredible honor. I'm lucky enough to be in a couple of others, but you know, this one's special. And anyway, I asked Garlitz, I said, why? And he said, in typical Garlitz fashion, everything. And I don't even know to this day what that means, man. So I don't know that I have a response other than just awe. It certainly makes you humble real quick. I'm speechless. I mean, it's a great question to start off with because now I look like a complete idiot because I don't know what to say. Congratulations, Lee and Sam. There's the interview right there.
Hey, he could have started off with that question that he asked John Force, but I think you cut him off right away and said, you know.
Yeah. Well, John had that coming.
By the way, it was a great lineup by Austin about, you know, whatever you see on the interview, it's just like working for him. I have to admit, Austin, if you're still listening, although you probably turned it off just like everybody else, you were just absolutely amazing over the weekend. I mean, to jump into an unfamiliar car, you know, with 2 laps to go and put down the numbers he put down, of course, hit the bulbs that he hit, just astonishing. Obviously, I know his dad, but I started racing with his grandfather, Tom Prock, and it's in the genes. It's just amazing. I'm sorry. Didn't mean to get off on an Austin Prock rant there. Go ahead. I apologize.
No, like Lee said, we're here to absorb as much as we can, take it all in. But let's go back down memory lane there for you. Your first race, you know, over your career, but your first race. What's the first race that you remember?
So the first race I ever went to live, drag race, was the very first NHRA Summer Nationals. Any idea where that might have been?
Ooh, well,
it's not where they used to be, I'm guessing.
I would say English Town,
because it was the first one.
Yeah,
it wasn't there very long.
Yeah.
Just take a guess.
I'm going with Lee with English Town.
No, that's where it went in the second year. But the very first NHRA Summer Nationals, which was held in 1970, was at an airport in York, Pennsylvania, York US 30 Dragway. Very famous drag strip. Now it's still just a functioning airport, but it closed in 1979. But it was everything I could have imagined. I was into drag racing before I went to that first race. I was absorbed on everything I could through every magazine and what little was on television at the time. Therefore, I had an idea of what I was looking at. But yeah, Gene Snow ran an NHRA record 214.28 miles an hour at that race in Nitro Funny Car. It was the last win for a Ford Top Fuel dragster in NHRA competition, Pete Robinson. And Dick Landy won Pro Stock. So there. Did I lose you?
Great. No, we're still here. Someone asked, how did you get started in racing? And you were alluding to that. And then they said rental cars, as a big joke nowadays, there's a lot of people getting into rental cars and doing a little bit of drag racing.
Yeah, I developed a reputation for that starting in 1990. 1990 was a weird year for me because I hadn't raced in 7 years at that time. And I was really getting sick of hearing everybody, the delay boxes were new. They weren't actually new. They started in 1985, 1986, but they were becoming prevalent in the sport in 1990. And I was getting sick of hearing people say you couldn't beat a delay box car. At the time, I was senior editor of Superstock and Drag Illustrated magazine, which means I worked for editor Steve Collison, who was also a racer. And Steve said, I said something to Steve in a general conversation about, this is not true. Obviously, they're simply reacting to a single stimulus, whereas a foot brake racer has to react to a countdown stimulus. And he said, well, go out and prove it. And I said, what do you mean? He says, well, you raced for a lot of years. He says, find something and go race. I took him up on it, and I had a 76 Corvette at the time, which was a collector's item, slowest Corvette ever built. And I mean that literally. The 76 was 180 horsepower and 3,800 pounds from the factory. So it was a 15-second car, and I ended up entering it in an eliminator category here in St. Louis, which allowed anything. There's absolutely no rules. Even bogus stuff, rollout counters and stuff like that was legal. It was a 26-week point series. I entered it in 1993, I guess it would have been, and won it. And the second slowest car, I was running 1550s. The second slowest car was running 1020s in the class. And I ended up, because Collison said, okay, nobody's going to believe it if you win points once. Now go do it again. So like an idiot, I went out and put my name on the line, or at least the name I was racing under, which was Mr. Dirt, and ended up winning the points the second year. Well, during that period, if I would go to a race, let's say Englishtown, which ran on Sundays. Let's say I had a television show to do on Englishtown on Sunday. I would fly in on Friday night, and I'd go race I'd get a rental car and go race at Atco on Friday night, go race at Maple Grove on Saturday night, and then go work at Englishtown on Sunday, and then fly back home on Monday. Turns out if you use the exact same rental car every weekend to race, it's not too different than having one sitting in your driveway. So over a period of 22 years, I guess, no, what the hell year is this? 2021. Over a period of about 18 years, ended up with 113 career wins, eliminator wins. And about 50 of those came from rental cars. So that's where the rental car mess comes from.
That's a heck of a record, Sam, in a rental car.
Rental car champion.
Five national event wins in a rental car too.
Yes. But
most recently, an NMRA event here in St. Louis in 2018.
See, I love
Shout
what you
outs to
proved
Hurt.
there, though. I love what you proved there, though, that anyone can go drag racing. It
Absolutely.
really is the most accessible motorsport.
Not only it works there's two important parts of that sentence. Anybody is one important part. Anything is the second important part. I have witnessed a human being named Nick Brem go triple O on a Zamboni. Zamboni actually makes an asphalt cleaner, like they do for the ice skate, the ice rinks. I witnessed a guy go triple O on a Zamboni, which means he could win.
Sam, you have no excuse now.
That's right, Sam. It's true.
Now I want to go and get the ice Zamboni and, see what kind of light. I'd have to pretty much pre-stage it and then let go and try and still cut a light on that thing.
You got to know what you're doing to do it, but it can be done, and that's the only thing that matters. It can be done.
Wow, that's impressive. That is.
Let me tell you a quick story that virtually nobody remembers. I can sit here and boast about winning races with rental cars. I know tons of other people that have won with rental cars. But for years and years and years, I announced with a guy named Ed O'Reilly. He's located out of Toledo, Ohio. I don't think you guys are old enough to remember Ed, but he was the IHRA announcer with me for national events. And when I was doing TV, Ed would announce, which means Ed was the voice of IHRA national events on Sundays from, I guess 1987 or so through probably 1998 or 9. Ed was also an active racer. I think very highly of announcers who actually go out and race, because it'd be like a baseball announcer who's never played baseball. It just doesn't make a heck of a lot of sense to me, because as we just pointed out, because everybody can go do this, even if you only do it twice, just go do it and understand what it's like. Anyway, Ed O'Reilly also raced rental cars, but Ed O'Reilly won stock eliminator at the 1978 IHRA Winter Nationals in a Chrysler K-Car station wagon rental car. Now, what happens when you win a national event in stock eliminator? Do you know? What's the first thing that happens to you? After you get the trophy and the Winter Circle celebration and everything else, what happens immediately after that?
Our tools.
The answer is you get paid. So go on.
Yeah, our tools broke out at that point.
Tools are broke out. That's exactly correct. Tear down. In stock eliminator is a legal class, or what we refer to as a legal class, which means it has very, very strict rules. You're not torn down in super gas, although they do look for illegal equipment and stuff. But in stock eliminator, the engine has to be stock, and that means you've got to pull ahead, and that means you've got to take off the manifold. And he did, and he left the car sitting in the pits overnight with the manifold and the heads off of it, and then Monday morning, real quickly ran out to an auto parts store and bought the gaskets that he had just destroyed, taking it apart, and ran them out to the racetrack, put the new gaskets in it, put it together, and drove it back to the airport, turned it in, and went home with his trophy.
Epic. Just epic.
I hope
epic. Ed O'Reilly, remember that name.
I hope no one from Hertz, Alamo, or any of these other places are listening right now, because all drag racers, they're like, "Oh, you do? Yeah, no, sorry."
I'll be honest with you.
And it's probably known.
Well, it is. And if you buy the insurance, they don't care. And quite frankly, anybody who doesn't buy the insurance with a rental car is an idiot. A lot of people say, "Oh, but the insurance on my credit card or my personal insurance will cover me." Yeah, and they'll drop you, just like if you ran your own car into a busload of nuns. But for $25 or $30 a day, you can drive your rental car full throttle into a bridge abutment, call them up and say, "Bring me another car, damn it," and they'll bring you another car. They don't care.
There you guys go. Life lesson.
Yeah.
Life lessons.
What the real joke is about that? Having been on the road for 40 years doing this stuff for a living, I am far more brutal on the rental cars that I don't race than I am on the ones that I race. If I get a rental car that I'm going to race, I don't beat it up. I don't run it over curbs or drive it into swamps and stuff like that. You know, I got to take care of the thing. I'm going to race it. But if I'm just, if I'm not going to race that weekend, hey, let's see how many times we can barrel roll this thing, you know? So the insurance is actually more important if I'm not racing. Sorry, go ahead.
Lee, no one can hear you, so that means we all have to drink because Lee decided to put himself on mute.
Yep.
I
did. For the record, I'm not the only one that does that, though.
Hey, before we go any further, does Bobby Bennett even watch this?
He does. He does. Look at that. Competition Plus apparel right there.
Brand new.
There you go. Okay.
Folks, be like Bret Kepner and get your Competition Plus apparel.
And be like Bobby Bennett and pay people just for the heck of, just because they wear your shirt.
There you go. There you go. Well, Bret, look, you are a wealth of knowledge in drag racing, obviously. And I want to ask if you can shed any light on the short, brief period that NASCAR actually sanctioned tracks and drag racing. It was brief, but it was there. You know, are any of the champions actually still alive is a question I've actually got, because they are recognized in the NASCAR Hall of Fame. There is a little hall, and they are recognized there, and that period is recognized there. So NASCAR and drag racing, could you enlighten us a bit?
Fantastic question, and I don't say that very often. However, the answer is going to surprise you. The NASCAR's involvement in drag racing was not as brief as you think. I'm pretty sure you, like most people, think that NASCAR was only involved in drag racing from 1965 through 1967. Am I correct?
That would be my understanding.
That would be incorrect. NASCAR first started sanctioning drag strips in 1953. Technically, 3 months before the National Hot Rod Association. Let me rephrase that. Technically, they held their first NASCAR drag race event 3 months before the National Hot Rod Association. The NHRA's first drag race was April 12th to 13th, 1953 at Pomona, California, the Southern California Drag Racing Championships. Bear with me on this, because when I do these things, I don't have a laptop open in front of me, and I may have to correct myself on some of these dates and stuff. The first NASCAR race was held in January of 1953 in Central Florida, in conjunction with the stock car race, the 500. It was actually in Valkyria, I think, Florida. I could be wrong on that, but I'm pretty sure it was Valkyria in Central Florida. They ran a drag race separately from the oval track in what they called, or let me rephrase that, for what they later called speed weeks. And remember, at Daytona, speed weeks is plural because it is multiple weeks with multiple disciplines of racing going on. At Bonneville, it is speed weeks, singular, because it's just 1 week. Always remember that. All right. So anyway, NASCAR started sanctioning drag races in 1953. They really, really went after sanctioning drag races beginning in 1956. And one of the reasons that it became an important aspect of NASCAR to sanction drag races that early was because of the Great Daytona Beach Riot of 1957. Any of you guys familiar with that?
No, not familiar at all.
All right. After 1953 at the airport, which was 100 miles away from the oval track, NASCAR started sanctioning the Speed Weeks drag race on the beach at Daytona. They ran at night on the beach with temporary lighting. As you're aware, prior to NASCAR's involvement, the Speed Week period was taken up with land speed record runs on the beach through the early 1950s and late 1940s. So NASCAR started running drag races on the beach, 1955. They ran airport stuff 53 and 54, and then in 1955 they had the first race on the beach. 1956 they had the second race on the beach. 1957 they had a third race on the beach. Well, an awful lot of human beings, just like nowadays, went to Daytona for Speed Week. Speed Week was only 1 week back then, and kind of rowdy people, if you want to put it that way. It's not like Bike Week or anything, but it was rowdy people. And the NASCAR drag races started at like 5 o'clock at night, but they ended at 8:30. And the large amount of human beings that showed up to watch the drag races got really upset when things ended at 8:30. And it was a full-blown call in the National Guard riot. You can do the research, just go back to January 1957 on newspaper archives or, newspapers.com and read about it. It was a big, big deal. It made every newspaper in the country. It was a kick in the left testicle for all of drag racing. Wally Parks was just going, oh, no. And it was a mess. But after that, NASCAR really went out of their way to start sanctioning drag racing. They never ran another race on the beach. In fact, they moved their drag races for Speed Week to Flagler Beach in Flagler, Florida, which was right up the road from Daytona. Anyway, from 1958 through 1963, NASCAR sanctioned almost 100 drag strips, and a whole lot of them were the straightaways of their sanctioned oval tracks. Their sanctioned oval tracks would run a drag racing program on the straightaway, and I'd start in turn 4, and depending on the length of the straightaway, there didn't have to be there are very few quarter-mile races, but it didn't even have to be at 8th mile. Some of them were 600 feet, 500 feet, whatever. But they ran competitive drag racing. And they did that pretty much at every track, every oval track in the Southeast, which NASCAR owned: the Carolinas, Florida, Georgia, Alabama. At that time, there was no such. If it wasn't a NASCAR oval track, it was an outlaw oval track. Period. Let me interject a really interesting aspect of here. You guys are familiar with Richard Petty's involvement in drag racing, correct?
Yes.
And what do you know about it?
From what I understand, he went back into drag racing because of the Hemi, issue in NASCAR and run the Hemi. He did have the wreck. He's actually continued drag racing after that. But it was only like a year or two, brief period.
I'm incredibly impressed that you guys even know that there were 2 cars that he did continue racing after the crash, which most people say, oh yeah, he came into drag racing because the NASCAR banned the Hemi in NASCAR racing, so he jumped into drag racing because Chrysler wanted him to be out there and blah, 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 and then he crashed. There was a fatality, and he never drag raced again. Complete and total garbage. But what's really interesting about the fact that, yes, he rebuilt a second car and continued to race the following year after the crash. What's really incredible about that is Richard Petty started drag racing on a pretty regular basis in 1958. And he started at these NASCAR oval track front straight drags. He branched out to, what most people would consider conventional drag racing, airports and purpose-built asphalt drag strips. But Petty was hardcore with the NASCAR drag racing and raced it for many, many, many years. Okay, now let's get into the era that you guys are talking about. In 1965, NASCAR decided we're going to get serious with this, and we're going to do things like host national events, and we're going to go to big tracks, and we're going to go make a conscious effort to switch a lot of asphalt drag strip to NASCAR sanctioning. And they were incredibly successful east of the Mississippi. Their national events were huge deals. The very first one ever held was at Budds Creek, Maryland. And I'll give you an example. In 1967, Connie Coletta became Jesus in Top Fuel racing because he won the Big Three, which was all 3 winter nationals at that time, which was, in order, the National Hot Rod, in order would be the American Hot Rod Association Winter Nationals at Phoenix, the National Hot Rod Association Winter Nationals at Pomona, and the NASCAR Winter Nationals, which right now I'm drawing a blank, if you can believe that. I don't remember where he won the NASCAR Winter Nationals. Maybe somebody typing in can refresh my memory. But either way, they had a very successful run through 1968. In 1968, that's when televised NASCAR stock car racing really took a big jump. And at that point, they didn't see that much value in continuing the drag racing sanction, so they didn't. There wasn't any big dramatic or nasty incident, that made them leave the sport or anything like that. They just basically decided to put all their eggs in the oval track basket. So if that's not a long and winded reply to your simple question, I don't know what would be.
No, that was great, Bret, and thank you for enlightening us. I lived for a brief time outside of Rochester, New York, and it seemed like Niagara drag strip was one of their principal drag strips.
Yeah,
and it was
Niagara had a lot of big races for NASCAR. There were a variety of them in New York State. Canandaigua was another big NASCAR track for a long time. Was it Henrietta County Fairgrounds had a big NASCAR? They had a big oval track, so they were running like 1,000-foot or something drags there. So yeah, NASCAR was all over New York. That would have been in that second era. You're right.
All right, Sam, my question is gone, so go ahead.
No, I'm like I said, I'm taking all this in. I mean, it's just knowledge after knowledge. But you got a couple of questions. The first one a lot of people are wondering is, how did you get started in announcing and where? And then Bill asked the same question a little bit earlier. He said, if someone wants to get into announcing, where would be a good start for them?
That's there are two different answers because it comes from two different worlds. When I started announcing, which would have been in 1977, I started announcing the same way pretty much every announcer from my period got their start. I used to race a 66 Barracuda 273 car in L-stock automatic. And I raced at the local track in St. Louis and was at St. Louis one night racing, got my butt kicked in the first round or whatever. And I was up in the timing tower talking with the announcer, who was a friend of mine and is to this day still a friend of mine, named Roger Monroe. Roger was up there announcing away, and we were chatting. Like I said, I'd gone out early, and Roger turned to me and he said the same thing that started the same line that has started a tremendous number of announcers' careers. He turned to me and he said, I have to go take a leak. Here, take over, and hands me the mic. Okay. At the time, I had already started my writing career, so I wasn't terrified. I'd never done it before, but as it turns out, it's just like writing, except you can't make any mistakes. Roger goes to the restroom, comes out of the restroom, lends an ear to the PA and says, oh, good, he's talking. I can go hang out with my buddies. So he went out and hung out with his buddies for like an hour, and then came back up in the tower. I handed him the mic back, and that was the end of that. A couple of months later, Roger got called. He was a fantastic motorcycle rider, still is. And he got a call from the Vance and Hines team to ride one of their pro stockers in testing. And he took it, of course. So the track operator, Phil Trover at the time, hopefully Phil's listening tonight, came up to me one night when I was racing, and he said, hey, I need an announcer. And I said, yeah, I know Roger left. And he says, well, what about you? You announced. And I said, well, I did once. And he says, well, that's good enough. Well, the class that I raced in paid $50 to win and $20 runner up. And he said, I'll give you 25 a night. And I thought, okay, I can keep coming over. This was a class legal car. This wasn't bracket racing yet. And there were some guys who were wounding me pretty badly on a weekly basis. that's why class racing went away. Anyway, not because of me, but because, it was really tough to keep up with the fastest guy in the class. So anyway, I thought, okay, I can come over here and bust my butt to try and make the final and make $1 at all, or I can come over here and be guaranteed runner-up money every week. So I took the announcing gig. Like I said, I had already started my journalism career, which is really what I got into the sport for. But I was able to continue that by announcing and writing. And it wasn't too long after that the American Hot Rod Association had a national event in St. Louis, and I got to announce a little bit there. So people heard me. I got to work with John Lundberg, who brought me up to Jim Tice and said, hey, this guy isn't that bad, which means exactly what he said. It didn't mean that I was good. It meant that I didn't completely suck. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that I was born with a voice that's, kind of announcer sounding. So long story short, in a very short period of time, I was announcing AHRA national events. I was announcing UDRA national events. And that led to IHRA national events. Well, actually, I worked NHRA national events in there as well. And that led to IHRA in 1985. Nowadays, completely different world. And I will tell you, whoever you are listening that posed that question, nowadays, the easiest way to get a job announcing at a drag strip is to call up the track operator and say, hey, I'd like to start announcing at your drag strip. I don't think I'm being too rude when I say there aren't many good announcers out there right now. Honestly, I have a situation, an event that I used to announce that I can't announce anymore, or I can't announce this year, and we can't find anybody to fill in for this race. There just aren't any people out there. So right now, if you want to be a drag racing announcer, here's your chance. Sure, a lot of tracks have announcers, have been there for decades, and the track operator isn't going to fire him and hire you. But there's a lot more tracks that don't have a regular announcer. There's a lot of tracks that have, guys and girls that, came out of the concession stands that are announcing just because they don't have anybody. So here's your chance. I mean that seriously. Call the track. Call multiple tracks. If that's what you want to do, the opportunity is out there right now.
Good word there, Brett. Very cool. And, my experience has been just show up for one.
Yeah.
Just get there.
Yep. It's like any other job. Show that you're reliable. That's the first thing. Well, technically, show them you can do the job is the first thing. But also show them that you're reliable. Show them that you're not a liability. And I mean that from everything to, stand sober to, not punching anybody. After that, you're pretty much golden if you just shut up, do your job.
There you go.
And looking at the transition, I mean, this is one of the standout questions I have for you. Looking at all the old ESPN footage and all the footage, how did you guys dare wear the white pants or the white outfits at the racetrack? And now, if you go to a racetrack or if you're traveling to PRI, the guys that are going because they're wearing black Vans, black Dickie shorts, or they have on a race t-shirt. Everything went from and that's why I brought this hat out tonight, the classic white look, to now everything is completely black.
Well, I'm not quite old enough to have been in the 50s where the guys really did wear, and if you had a team of 5 guys that ran a drag car, you all wore white hats, white shirts, white pants, the whole deal. I agree. That was an amazing situation. My white pants on ESPN actually have a story behind them. I cannot believe I've never, ever brought this up in public, ever. I got into an argument with ESPN. Now, remember, I worked with ESPN for 27 years. And with ESPN, at least for the 27 years that I worked for them, it didn't have anything to do with how good you were. It was how loyal you were. if ESPN found out that you went over and did a show for Speed Vision, you were gone. And I respected that. The late Steve Evans had a big problem because he kind of went and did something else, and he wasn't on ESPN for many, many years. But I was always loyal. I had many opportunities to do other stuff. I also contacted them on several occasions when I had gigs for, really small little networks. I've done stuff, believe it or not, for 57 networks. So trust me when I tell you that of those 57, there's a whole bunch you've never heard of. Really little tiny deals. So anyway, I got into a little bit of an argument because ESPN would not allow me to wear jeans. They wanted me to wear khaki slacks, and I even wore black jeans, to where you couldn't even really tell. Now, keep in mind, I was the pit reporter. I wasn't one of the voiceover guys who were, sitting in the truck at the time, or, later on in the studio, where, quite frankly, we didn't wear pants. We wore shorts. We didn't have to wear anything. But I thought it was kind of necessary. If you really want me down in the dirty pits, kneeling next to a fuel car, then I wore jeans, at least be comfortable. And certainly it's not a fashion statement to wear jeans or not wear jeans. It's pretty neutral. Nope, they didn't want to hear it. So I did the one thing that unfortunately I knew in advance would drive the cameramen crazy. But the one thing that they didn't expect, and that's I wore white pants. And I did that for, it was either 2 or almost 3 years before I finally got a call from Bristol, Connecticut, from the head office of ESPN. And they said, wear the damn jeans. And you know what I did when they said, wear the damn jeans? I was so used to wearing the white pants, I said, the hell with it. I'll just wear khakis. They're looser and they fit better. So I wore the khakis. That's the White Jeans story. What the difficult part was wearing the suit coat. I was inducted into the East Coast Drag Racing Hall of Fame in 2007. And you know what they wanted from me? They wanted my suit coat for their Hall of Fame. And I don't care what material you find that you think is going to be cool when it's 97 degrees out and you're walking in through the pits or standing on the top end or whatever in the sunlight. There's no such thing as a comfortable suit coat. So we all had to wear the suit coats. We didn't have to wear a tie because luckily in the 80s and 90s, the ties were out of style. So it was much more a leisurely look that they were going after. But it was still a pain. I mean, you lose 8 pounds in a day just from sweating. Weird questions. You guys are good.
Hey, we try.
Yeah, we try. Bobby just found these 2 hacks, and here we are.
Yep, there you go. Hey,
there you go.
Make it 3, my friends.
Hey, we showed up. That's what we did with Bobby. We showed up.
There you go. Yeah. The honest to God, that's the story of Bobby Bennett's success. He kept showing up. Even when people didn't want him around, he kept showing up. I did the exact same thing. Yeah. If you bug the hell out of them, they're either going to fire you or hire you, one of the two. So
there you go. Look, Doug Winters, the Pro Mod racer,
did fantastic yesterday or 2 days ago.
He did.
I texted Aaron, congratulations, did a fantastic job. Yeah, I've known Doug. Geez, I met him and his brother and his dad around 1986 or 7, probably. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, great. He chimes in, says ESPN Super Chevy show when we raced Nitro Coupes was great with Bret. And I would love to hear your thoughts on that time frame, because not only did I watch that time period on TV, but I would go to Super Chevy shows at Atlanta Dragway with my dad. And I actually got to see my first junior dragster at a Super Chevy show, and that got me in the juniors.
Wow, that's really cool. I'm sorry, but every time I think of Super Chevy Atlanta, I think of Jerry Gannon's last run. A horrible situation. A great jet car driver, Jerry Gannon. The Nitro Coupe deal was so weird. Roger Gustin was a fantastic promoter. I mean, he was just astonishing. And Roger Gustin wasn't just, Roger Gustin didn't create Super Chevy, first of all. Do you know who did create Super Chevy? I mean, literally the man who came up with the idea and actually initiated the very first one at Orange County Raceway in 1983.
No, but I want to know.
Dave McClellan.
Really?
The voice of NHRA. He is the guy that came up with the Super Chevy Show idea. They ran the first one at Orange County International Raceway outside of Los Angeles. And it became, it was becoming a series when Roger Gustin took over. Roger Gustin's history was amazing. He was a funny car racer. Well, actually, he was a super stock racer to start, along with his brothers. He had two brothers. So one of them still alive. And then when the factory experimental era in 1965 started, they all got into that, and they worked their way into the nitro funny cars from the ground level, from the factory experimentals on. And he was a great promoter of his own cars, but he also would create little circuits that raced around his West Virginia home. Well, actually, he was from, what's the name of that place? Something Furnace, like Iron Furnace, Ohio or something. It's right on the river across from Huntington, West Virginia. Anyway, then in 1973, well, I'm getting ahead of myself. In 1969, Roger moved to a jet-powered funny car, back when a jet-powered funny car was a jet engine put in a production car, period, going 200 miles an hour on Polyglass GT 15s. And he became a member of the Outlaws, which were jet-powered dragster drivers. And in 1973, he met with the National Hot Rod Association, and they said, build us a car that we believe is safe, and we'll think about licensing you people, because jets weren't allowed to run at NHRA tracks for decades, from 1962, I believe it was, until Roger Gustin built a hardcore, to-the-spec jet-powered dragster, showed it to NHRA, just lobbied them to allow it to run, and they finally said okay in 1974, and Roger Gustin was the guy that brought jets back to the National Hot Rod Association. But he didn't pick up on the Super Chevy promotion until 87. I take that back. That was when he had the Lava hand soap jet-powered Camaro funny car, which had been booked in at all the Super Chevys in 85 and 86. And it was a very, very popular car because it was featured on nationwide TV commercials for Lava hand soap. Again, a Roger Gustin promotion. He was everywhere. So anyway, Roger created the 4-element Super Chevy concept. And the 4 elements were drag racing, number 1. Number 2 was a big car show. Number 3 was something else. What was it? Oh, the manufacturer's midway. Huge manufacturer's midway. And number 4 was, what did I already say? Oh, drag racing car show, manufacturer's midway. And number 4 was a big swap meet, selling parts and stuff. And that's what Roger geared the Super Chevy towards. One thing a lot of people don't realize, except Doug Winters, he will definitely know this, was at one time, after that 4-element concept was put into play, it exploded. Super Chevy just absolutely exploded. And in that explosion, I believe it was 1990 and 1991, Super Chevy Sunday, or Super Chevy shows, McClellan called his Sunday, Roger changed it to show because it was a 3-day event, became the largest drag racing series on the planet. At the time, the NHRA only had 15 or 16 races, and in the 90s, Roger was over 20 events, all of them at national event tracks, all of them drawing as many people as everybody else's national events, IHRA and NHRA. And because of the bracket racing program, he usually drew 400 cars as well. Now, at that point, that's all his drag racing program was bracket cars. And Roger's formula for success was something that drag racing is just now understanding. Roger told me, this is a direct quote. He said, God bless the drag racing fans that show up before the track, even opens, and they're first ones in the top row of the stands at sunrise. And he said, they buy food and drink at the concession stands all day long. He says, and those guys are there for the last pass at 11:45 at night. He says, I love them. My heart's in drag racing. That's where I started. You can't beat those kinds of fans. He said, but those are hardcore drag racing fans. Those aren't average people that are looking for automotive entertainment. So his game plan was to get people to show up at a Super Chevy Sunday, and the first thing they do is they go they go into the car show, and they go look at the cars, spend an hour there, and then they go over the manufacturer's midway, and they see all the latest equipment, and they maybe buy some stuff and talk with manufacturers and get some decals and whatever. And then after that, it's time to grab something to eat, sit in the grandstands and watch some drag racing. But they don't want to watch 5 hours of drag racing. They want to watch, a couple of cars go down the track while they, drink a soda and eat a couple of hot dogs. And then they want to go over to the swap meet and spend what little money they have left and go home with something. His concept for the Nitro Coupes was originally for an 8-car field, which is kind of, as Doug will tell you, where it stayed. And they would run twice a day on Saturday and 3 times a day on Sunday. So the drag fans, the average fans could sit down while they were eating that burger and drinking that Coke and watch, 25, 35 minutes of Nitro Coupes. It was never designed to be more than 25 or 35 minutes. And that's what the National Hot Rod Association is finding out right now. Because in the 30 years since what we're talking about, Roger Gustin started, you and I, all three of us, know that the attention span for anything right now is at an absolute maximum of 2.5 hours. If you want me to say something that'll get the people on the internet screaming, I can say the greatest thing that could happen to the National Hot Rod Association that would solve almost every problem the NHRA is facing right now is 8-car fuel fields. It would solve every problem under the planet, just like Roger Gustin did. Your fans would not have to be there longer than 2.5 hours to see an entire drag race. You automatically have a show that fits the TV window, and again, for the whole drag race to be live. You automatically cut the purse. More money for the NHRA. You automatically cut a run out of the expense of running a fuel car. Again, saving money for the racers as well as the NHRA. Sure, it's less than 16 cars, I'll be the first to admit. But everybody understands that there's only about 25 top fuel dragsters on the planet right now, or at least in the country. I shouldn't say on the planet. Australia and Europe both have... they're probably in the up near 20 total. But in the country, 25 top fuel dragsters, well, yeah, that's enough for a 16-car field. Not 23 times a year, it ain't. So we've definitely got to look at that for the top fuel and 20 cars deal. And I'm getting way off my beaten track. What the heck were we talking about? Oh, Roger Gustin Super Chevy Nitro Coupes. He also wanted something that people hadn't seen before. Now, don't get me wrong. He had, pro mods show up and make a run a lot of times because it was fairly cheap to get in and they could run in front of, a huge crowd. However, the Nitro Coupe deal was Roger's idea for something that he could advertise that people had never seen before. And that was supercharged door slammers with nitro in the tank. And he campaigned it on a rule of 30% maximum. They messed around with the percentage until they figured out what everybody liked. And as Doug will tell you, Doug's probably the only guy that never burned a car to the ground because God knows everybody else did. There were people in that series Jim Nordhagen comes to mind. Doug will probably chuckle at this, but I think Jim Nordhagen burned down 5 cars in Super Chevy history. When I say burned down, I'm talking full-blown funny car fires, because that's all they were. They were suspended funny cars.
Bill Coolman had one that just...
Well, Coolman had one that almost killed him.
I know. It was bad. Woo.
Yeah, he was stuck in the car, and he'd split the motor in half, and he was going for the first 5-second run on that pass. He had just gone 6 seconds flat at Columbus, and remember, this is 30 years ago. He had just gone 6 seconds flat at 234 miles an hour at Columbus, and the air at Virginia Motorsports Park, where he had that fire, was just perfect. And keep in mind, that day, there were 3 other huge fires. Gary Irving was one. Doug can probably remind me who the other 2 were. I don't remember. Might have been Dave Graytech and another, but there were 4 big fires at that race that day, including Bill Coolman. So anyway, the Nitro Coupe deal had a very short run, but a lot of things happened in that short run as far as performance records are concerned for door slammers. There's a guy that pretty much nobody knows about unless they're following right now the Midwest Pro Mod Series. Actually, it's now called the Midwest Drag Racing Series, out of Oklahoma. His name's Randy Merrick, M-E-R-I-C-K. In 99, Doug? Randy Merrick ran the first 230-mile-an-hour door slammer pass in a Nitro Coupe at Joliet. He also ran 6:10 on that pass, which at the time was the quickest elapsed time ever for a door slammer. Like I said, Coolman went 6 flat, 234. The first 5-second run didn't happen at a Super Chevy event, but Mitch Stott, of course, was the first guy to do it at Darlington with alcohol in the tank. But everybody that was running that series, including Doug Winters, was right up there among the quickest and fastest door slammers. And for a very brief period, again, 97 or so through 2002, if you wanted to see the quickest and fastest door slammers in the world, you had to go to a Super Chevy show. But it wasn't hard to do because there was 23 or whatever, like I said, Super Chevy shows running. They were all over the place. Tremendous number of supercharged door slammer drivers got their start in Super Chevy. And boy, was that a long one.
The knowledge that we are getting right now is unreal. So you've talked about it. One of my favorite, there's a couple of announcers, you said that there's a few, but a guy like Al Tucci, if I guarantee if he was on, he would say, he looked up to you and different things like that. When you're looking down that list of them, like I said, Al Tucci, you have Lee Sebring, you have Brian Loans. What is that like to see the torch passed down in generation? Do you see some of yourself in some of these people, that are still holding on and still going?
No, I think of the group that you just announced or just named, they all pretty much have their own personalities. There have only been a couple of instances where one announcer really went out of his way to copy another. But Sebring certainly has his own style. I have to say, watching Brian Loans has been one of the biggest treats of my life when it comes to actually paying attention to other guys. One thing, because I worked up until 2010, I worked 145 to 155 events a year for almost 30 years. And that means that I never got a chance to hear anybody else. I was always announcing multiple events during the week, and I was the announcer, unless I heard the local track announcer, who don't get me wrong, there was plenty of really good local track announcers, many of whom are still very close friends of mine, and who still announce. But Loans is amazing. He is riding the wave right now. I don't see anybody knocking him off of that wave for a long, long time. If anybody, put it this way, whoever is going to knock Brian off the wave, even if it's old age and senility, it's not on the horizon right now. He has the knowledge. He's not a stupid psycho freak like me or several other people who really just go berserk with the stats. He's very well-rounded. He knows how to place an emphasis on a stat that's important, but he also knows how to avoid numbers and just concentrate on the personalities of the sport. Tony Pedregon got a pretty raw deal in that he was hired to be a color guy. And all a color guy is somebody who's already done this and can somehow relate that to fans. So Tony Pedregon was hired to be Tony Pedregon, the funny car driver, and talk about, what it's like inside the car, while Brian or anybody else, reports the numbers and anchors the show. Brian has done more to help Tony Pedregon get to that point than anybody else. So Brian understands everybody's job in the game. He is the undisputed voice of the National Auto Association. He's doing everything that requires a voice for the NHRA now. And a lot of that's because of COVID. There's only 13 people who work for the NHRA anymore. I think 60 human beings total work for NHRA now. And that's why they're going to lease out the Glendora office, because nobody even goes there anymore. So my point is, Brian is, I can't describe what a pleasure it is to watch him work. He just does everything well. Don't get me wrong. He is not a 1970s or 80s announcer. The 1970s and 80 announcer had a completely different job to do. Looks and sounds the same, don't get me wrong, but it is completely different. Would Brian make a good 70s or 80s announcer? Yeah, I honestly think he would. Some of the other guys, maybe not so much. But, that's like asking somebody from 2020 if they would be a good locomotive conductor. It's two different worlds, two different histories. So if you're asking who I used to look up to, tragically, it's the old school guys. John Lundberg has become a close personal friend. Dave McClellan has as well. I never really knew Steve Evans that well, because again, I was always working against him. I'd be working the same weekend. Don't get me wrong, I saw him on TV all the time, but I didn't get to know him that well. McClellan, on the other hand, I did have a chance to, and I'm still friends with him today. And John Lundberg really paved the way for what we consider a drag racing national event announcer right now. I shouldn't even say national event announcer, just a good drag racing announcer. He's pretty much the best in my book, but my book's getting pretty old. Next question. Or did I answer that one?
No, Sam,
you
definitely did. He did, and I think David had a pretty funny comment there, saying that we can bring that back up here. That Brian Loan's head now is not going to fit through any more facility doors until they now enlarge them. So
don't for a minute think that I don't tell him that stuff to his face, so he's already got a swelled head, and B, I immediately follow that with, by the way, lose some weight, you're ugly. So.
Well, I mean, other than that, Lee, my final question is to you. You've had a long career in motorsports. You've seen a lot. For a guy like myself and a guy like Lee doing something like this, having these opportunities to be able to talk with legends like yourself, and going down the list of people that we've talked to, a great question for me, I guess, to end up a lot of the knowledge that I had is seeing us and seeing what we're doing. What would you say, someone that's been professional like yourself, what would you say to guys like us?
I'll tell you what, I mean this in all sincerity. I do a lot of podcasts, and you guys ask the best questions of anybody in the last 2 years that I've heard. You really came up with some exceptionally good questions, and that's the key. You asked I'm going to tell. I say this in private to a lot of people, but I'll go ahead and say it in public because what do I have to lose? When somebody gets out of the top end of when somebody gets out of a race car at the top end, doesn't matter if it's a stock eliminator car or a top fuel dragster, and it doesn't matter if they won the final round or if they just lost in the first round. The stupidest question you can ask is, how do you feel? For multiple reasons. I'm not just going to throw that out there. I'll back it up. First of all, if you are a racer, you know that there's no answer to that question. Another question that I hear, unfortunately, far more than I want to hear, is how much does this mean? Whatever, the premise is. How much does this mean to you and your team? What the hell is that? Are you supposed to say about this much? How much does it mean? Maybe that much? What's a proper answer there? 8 pounds? It's just silly. All you have to do in this business, as far as announcing is concerned, or hosting a show like you guys do, and I've told this to people who I've had a few people actually ask me in my career, hey, I'm starting to get jobs, what should I do? Do you have any words of advice or whatever? And the one thing that I've always told people is ask questions that mean something. But if you can't think of anything that means anything, then ask a question you want to know the answer to, which I think is something that you guys did, which was brilliant. But more importantly, I've told people, when I say that, they go, oh, geez, I don't know that much about cars. I said, no, you're missing the point. If you can't think about a pertinent question to ask somebody, ask them if they have any pets. Ask them, well, no, that would be kind of stupid too. Ask them anything. What are your hobbies? If you weren't a drag racer, what would you be doing? What's your favorite movie? We actually did that a couple of times on ESPN back in the 90s. You might remember it. We went through the pits and asked every pro stock driver, what's your favorite movie? Just to make it interesting, just to make it unusual. A very interesting, I'll ask you guys, what genre of movies do you think almost every one of them responded? Pro stock drivers now.
I don't know how to think like a pro stock.
Well, that's a good point. That's actually a great answer. So I'll go ahead and tell you, because I was shocked too, but it makes total sense. Westerns. They all brought up some famous, Western shootout movie, High Noon, or, a John Wayne movie or something like that. We asked funny car guys the same question, and they all responded almost to the man, a Clint Eastwood movie of some kind. They all wanted to be badasses. So stuff like that, may seem ridiculous at the time, but it actually almost always ends up coming back to you as something good. But again, back to the advice, ask something pertinent, not how do you feel, not how much does this mean, how does this win help you for the rest of the year? What, are you kidding me? I mean, if somebody asked me that, I would either laugh or hit them. I mean, I swear, especially the way you feel when you get out of the car at the other end. Like I said, win or lose. But like I said, if you don't have anything in your head, and it's understandable, it happens to everybody, ask something else. Who's going to be the happiest at home for your win? There's a guy I saw. Oh, it was on Price is Right the other day. You know how Drew Carey, actually Bob Barker, as soon as they spin the wheel, he says, you want to say hi to anybody at home? Guy turned to the camera and he says, I want to say hi to my dog. If we could get a drag racer to do that, it'd be fantastic. Instead of, the Kenny Bernstein, well-rehearsed, hats off to the sponsor, And you can't blame Kenny Bernstein for doing that. I mean, Kenny Bernstein was a wizard for coming up with that concept. Unfortunately, it was so slick, everybody and their brother, started using it and have been now for 35 years. But to the announcers out there, just if you can't think of something interesting, ask questions that you want to know. And never go out of your way to make statements. Don't get me wrong, as a stat guy, I make a lot of statements. I'm the first one to agree. But most of the time when I make a stat statement, I know the stat. So just like you guys, I know what I'm talking about. But if I'm not sure, like earlier I brought up that Connie Coletta thing, and I'm thinking even now, probably shouldn't have brought that up because I couldn't remember the answer. I still don't remember where the hell the 67 Winter Nationals for NASCAR were held, and it's driving me nuts. I'm going to look it up as soon as I hang up. Anyway, don't worry about making statements. Let the other people do the statements. You guys know from interviewing human beings more than just calling races that every human being is different. Every human being requires certain buttons to push to get a decent response. And it's never the same buttons. There's very few, put 3 people in a room. Very few times will you find that 2 of them will respond to the same stimulus. I'll give you a great example. Remember Jimmy Rector? Mm-hmm. Alcohol funny car racer, was world champion in IHRA in the 90s. Jimmy, big old burly guy. And he would get out of the car at the other end, and you couldn't get him to say a word until you told him what the car ran. That's all he wanted to know. He didn't care about anything except what did the car run, because he tuned it himself. So, he had it set up for a number, and he wanted to know if he hit the number and did things right, or if it slowed down, it means he did things wrong, or if it went faster, then he, was even happier. Confused, but happier. And I learned real quick with Jimmy Rector that I could get him to answer any question I wanted if I just dangled it in front of him before telling him what the car ran. He'd get out of the car and say, "What it run? What it run?" And I'd say, "I don't know. When was the last time you had sex? Or whatever." And he would answer me to get to what the car ran. On the other side of the coin, Bob Glidden didn't want to talk about racing at all. If you watch Bob Glidden interviews, very seldom did he say really anything about how he was running. He would talk about something he did during the week. I spent all week long on these cylinder heads. And you could get him to talk about that all week long. You could get him to talk about Etta or the kids or whatever all week long. Bob didn't really talk that much about racing. Ricky Smith, I'm notorious for messing with Ricky Smith for the last 40 years. But Ricky is one of the very few guys who will answer just about any question. And you can bet that whatever he says, he means. He's got a sense of humor, but boy, you have to know him really well before you get to it. On the other side of the coin, Ricky Smith will cry at the drop of a dime. I don't know what to say. I'd like to thank my sponsors. Oh my God. He's really emotional about everything. So you have to be prepared. You don't have to use that because it's coming, but you have to be prepared to integrate it into your interview with Ricky Smith. Now, he can get out of the car and say, "I'd like to thank Motocraft now, but I can't believe I want to know." And you can say, "By the way, Bob Glidden said you're a complete jerk." And you go, "Wait a minute now. That Bob Glidden, he's the one that's a goddamn jerk. I'll tell you what, with Bob Glidden, I'll bring that car up here. Bring that car up here right now. I'll race you right now." So you just have to know what you're dealing with people.
Oh my God.
Oh, Bret, thank you for that knowledge. Thank you for dropping that knowledge. Yes, thank you. I've got one last question myself, and it's very personal to me because I want to ask.
Yikes!
I'm gonna present these drag racers' names and in order of obscurity, and you being the wealth of knowledge that you are, I want to see what the measuring stick is on them and their impact in drag racing. So
let me get this straight. You're going to mention a name, and you want me to expand on their place in drag racing?
yes, what you
Okay.
know and their place. Yes.
All right.
3 names. I'll give you the 3 names, and you can take them
Oh,
however you
3?
want to.
Okay, go
So
ahead.
Hubert Platt.
Hubert Platt.
Gene. Yep.
Oh, you want me to
Hubert
take
Platt.
them?
Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and give them all 3. All
All
3.
right.
Hubert Platt.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Hubert Platt, Gene Cromer, Ed Skelton.
First of all, I'd like to say get well soon to Gene Cromer. Are you aware of his little incident last week?
I am. Yeah. See, the reason I ask is my dad, Melvin Kraft, is his longtime crew chief.
Yeah, I know. You know, I was lucky enough to be around announcing the Southeast Gassers when Gene came out of retirement, you know, with Quain's help, and started racing again. And I knew all about Gene's career from the 1960s and 50s. I'm picking Gene first just because, like I said, for the people who don't know, Gene was loading the car the other day to go to a Southeast Dragster event. You guys may have brought this up. I apologize if you've already said it. And was driving the car into the trailer, throttle stuck, got plowed into a tree or something, and he got banged up a little bit. And Gene's no spring chicken. Gene is 80, what is he, 4 now? And, you know, any major crash or incident, you know, is going to beat you up pretty bad at that age. But it looks like he's going to recover and we'll be back racing. I don't know how bad the car is. How bad is it, Lee?
It can be repaired. It did completely destroy the fiberglass front end, and it basically just pushed the front end of the frame up on the engine. And there are some things underneath that will need to be repaired, but it is fixable. It is, the old gal is fixable.
I don't know if Gene has, you know, said anything to anybody about, you know, how soon he wants to come back or anything like that, but we'll find out. His wife's going to have a lot to say about that too, I'll bet. In any case, I'll take Gene first. Gene raced in a relatively small area of tracks. Let me rephrase that. He raced in a relatively small area that had tons of tracks when he first started. And between Greer, South Carolina, Ware Shoals, South Carolina, Chester, South Carolina, and several other tracks in that general Spartanburg, Greenville area, he became incredibly well known with his original Moonlighter 1940 Willys. The cool thing about Gene is he continued racing the car as an A gasser with a big Ford engine for quite a few years, but people don't realize that he got into the pro stock wars roughly as early as anybody could, 1969. Pro stock was actually started by the United Drag Racers Association, or what we know as pro stock. It was started by the UDRA in 1967. The AHRA took it in 1968. NASCAR ran a weird version called Ultra Stock in 1968, and then NHRA, after watching everybody fine tune it, which is something NHRA has done with a lot of classes, they let other people take the risks, get it figured out, and then they make it their own. NHRA debuted it in 1970. Well, Gene was actually running heads-up super stock cars, which is what pro stock was called back then, in late 1968 and early 1969. What's interesting is one of the people that he got into the earliest pro stock with was Houston. You said Hubert or Houston?
I said Hubert.
Yeah, that's what I thought. He got involved with Hubert Platt. Hubert Platt also ran gassers for many years, but he got caught up in the factory experimental switch into funny cars. And like so many people in 1968, he saw, you know, the supercharger explosions and the cost of nitro and everything else, and just didn't see a viable way to keep making the money match racing that they were if he continued in funny car eliminator. So before 1969, which involved Houston, of course, And I'll explain that here in a minute. Before 1969, Hubert had already decided to go into pro stock or heads up super stock racing. So Cromer and Hubert both got into heads up super stock racing at almost the same time. Both were driving Fords, and they raced each other almost constantly down in that little circle, which had by that time expanded into pretty much all the Southeast, the Carolinas, Florida, Alabama, Georgia. Hubert got a tremendous amount of national coverage in the magazines because of his funny cars. Gene didn't get a heck of a lot of national coverage. He got some, but he didn't get very much. And then Gene retired. I think it was 1973. He was still running a Maverick, I think, at the time. I could be wrong on that. Maybe he had already gotten a Pinto. Well, either way, I think he was running a Maverick in 1973. Finally retired and didn't come back for whatever it ended up being, 35 years. Let me expand on the Houston Platt situation. Houston Platt was Hubert's brother, and Houston was involved in the infamous darkest day of drag racing, quote unquote, on March 3rd, 1969, at a little unsanctioned track in Covington, Georgia, called Yellow River Dragway. I won't go into details because if you own Google, you can find all the details you want. He had a crash that involved going into the crowd. It wasn't necessarily his fault, but that doesn't matter. 11 people died that day. It was the Le Mans 55 of drag racing. It was the worst deal that we've ever had, no question. And it really screwed Houston up. Houston was an interesting guy, kind of outgoing at the time, but after that, he was never outgoing again. And it wasn't until nearly the very end of his life, around 2010 or so, that he got back into drag racing. A couple of guys decided to recreate one of his Nitro Funny cars that he did come back and race a little bit after Yellow River, but his last Nitro Funny car was a 70.5 Camaro that he campaigned, and he traveled with the recreation of it. And I actually put him on TV at the Henderson, North Carolina East Coast Drag Racing reunion. And he finally got over that horrible situation, and everybody was elated to see that. I honestly forget the third name now. What was it?
It was Ed Skelton.
Oh, Ed Skelton. Jesus. Are we just talking about Ford Pro Stock drivers here?
Apparently so. I mean, look, you're honestly putting together some links that my dad hasn't even explained to me, and I figured you'd kind of be the guy, you know.
The separation, that's very true. Ed Skelton lasted with the funny cars a little longer than Hubert, but then he got into pro stock racing as well, because, you know, pro stock racing, I'm not going to go into detail on this, but drag racing every 10 years reverts to the same format, and that's its original format. 2 production cars racing without a handicap to see who gets to the finish line wherever it's located first. And that happens every 10 years. Even though drag racing started 50 years before 1950, we'll pick it up at 1950 as 2 production cars. 1960, the dragsters started getting real big in the late 1950s, but in 1960s, the super stockers took over. And super stockers remained solid through the 1960s until the factory experimental cars came out. And then the Nitro Funny cars. And in 1970, back to pro stock production cars. That lasted through the 1970s, even though drag racing itself became a bigger and bigger deal through the 1970s. In the 1980s, everybody went back to pro street. 2 production cars racing side by side, heads up. Pro street was all well and good, but then, of course, we had pro modified and stuff like that show up in 1990. Then, of course, we had small tire racing show up in 2000. Then, of course, we had radial tire cars show up in 2010. And in 2020, we all got screwed, so nothing showed up. Well, no, I take that back. I guess if I can boast, I'm the guy that created the factory stock category, and factory stock might be the 2020 version of that. But back to Ed Skelton. Like I said, he got caught up in the funny car deal, and by 1969, 1970, these guys all wanted to get back to something realistic, something they could make money at match racing. And he built a pro stock Ford as well. So you got 3 pro stock Ford guys from South Carolina right there.
Boom. All right. Well, that's all I got. We're good.
I'm so happy to have wasted this hour with you. It was a great time.
I don't think it's been wasted at all. Doug Winter chimes in. He says, "Tell Bret, ask your doctor if it's right for you." Inside joke. That's automatic laughter.
Do you want to know the joke? If a couple of years ago, Doug got a sponsorship, a big sponsorship from Ameritor. You remember that on his current NHRA Pro Modified Chevelle? Mm-hmm. I think they made truck parts, didn't they? Ask Doug. Doug, did they make truck parts? Am I screwing up everything here?
Keep rolling. You might chime in.
Yeah.
Well, it really doesn't matter what they make, because as soon as I saw it, I got a pet peeve. If you can't put what your sponsor is on the side of the car, and I don't mean the name, I mean, what do they do? A great example, you agree with me on that?
Yeah.
A great example was a pro stock car. I keep thinking it was Kenny Koretsky. Back in the 90s, it was a red Chevy Beretta, I think it was, or Chevy something, Cavalier maybe. And it was bright red, and all it said across the side of the car in giant letters was Mace, M-A-C-E. And I thought, well, that's weird, pretty potent sponsor. I don't even know what it was or what they made, but I knew it couldn't possibly be real Mace. Roy Hill had a Pro Mod Mustang sponsored by Odoban, O-D-O-B-A-N. And it had a picture of a can with a face and hands laughing. Was it deodorant? I don't have any idea what the hell it was on the side of the car. So it drives me crazy, especially when you get, these 21st century made up words, extra bow, or whatever, down the side of the car. And it doesn't at least say extra bow, fruit flavored popcorn or whatever the hell it is on the side of the car. And Doug's car fell into that category. It just said Ameritor on the side of it. So I went up to him in the pits. I did the NHRA Pro Modified TV show for 17 years. So I was constantly involved with crap going on with all these pro mod guys. And I went into Doug when he showed up with the car for the first time. I went into his pits and I looked at it and I said, Ameritor. And, normally I would say, okay, what the hell is Ameritor? Tell me what it is so I can, talk about it and help you out since you're not doing it. But I just looked at the car and I said, Ameritor. Ask your doctor if Ameritor is right for you. That's where that came from. And I said it every time the car ran. Ask your doctor if Ameritor is right for you. Oh, God.
There you go. Yeah, that could fit for a lot of sponsors out there when they don't. 100%. Yeah, they don't. Well, Bret, it's been an honor. Thank you. We hope you have a good rest of your night. We're going to shut the power hour down and move on.
You have to close the show with everyone, for the sake of this. Can you please close the show with another Ricky Smith impersonation?
Oh, Ricky's going to kill me. I'll tell you a really cool story about Ricky Smith that I have to use his voice in. I constantly, for 40 years, I walk up to Ricky Smith and go, "Hey, Ricky, how you doing?" He's like, "I'm doing okay, Bret." We just have conversations like that. It doesn't even bother him anymore. He's so used to me giving him crap sounding like. This was at the ill-fated 1988 IHRA. I don't think it was the Winter Nationals. It might have been at Bradenton, Florida. That was the Billy Meyer year. We went to Bradenton for a national event for some reason. It was just a disaster. So anyway, Ricky was having a hard time getting down the track in the red and white Motorcraft Thunderbird. And he was in the pits underneath the car working on the rear end, laying in the sand, I might add, at Bradenton, underneath the car with the rear end jacked up, working on the rear end. And Ricky has always been incredibly accommodating for me. We're friends, but you still have to, watch your P's and Q's and don't walk around like you own the place when you go into a racer's pit area. And with Ricky, I can, get his attention. You don't just walk up and stick a microphone in a guy's face, but, get his attention and he'll say, oh yeah, come on in, and we'll talk. Well, in this particular case, he's underneath the rear end and it's obvious he's changing gears. Like I said, he was having trouble getting down the track. So I told the cameraman, who I worked with for 20 years, was one of my closest friends, Scott Barnes. I said, go ahead and roll on this. And I just rolled underneath the car right up alongside of him while he's, laying on his back, working, over his head. And he never missed a beat. There was a lot of times I would do interviews with him and he'd just keep on working and talking. So I rolled in next to him and I got the microphone. I said, "Hi, Ricky, having problems getting down this track. A little bit sandy out there, buddy." And he goes, "Yeah, I know, Brett. I'm trying to figure out what to do." And I said, "Well, what kind of gear do you think you're going to use to get down this track?" He says, "Well, I had 456 in it earlier." He says, "But that ain't going to work." He says, "I'm probably going to have to go down to 411, on this next pass." I said, 411? I said, "Well, that car ain't going to ET." I said, "But it's going mile an hour like a hell." And he goes, "Yeah, I know that." He says, "And I'm worried about the sand down the top end too." And I said, "Well, Ricky, I hope it works for you. Good luck, buddy." And he says, "Thank you, Brett." And I rolled out underneath the car and walked away.
Yes. 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 Oh, man. Oh, that's great. That is great. Brett, we gotta let Elon figure out when to book you next for sure.
Oh man.
Thank you.
Just give me a call. I'll be here. I really enjoyed it. Like I said, you guys asked great questions. I mean that sincerely. Really impressed with that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night, sir.
See you, buddy.
Man, I could listen to that for another 2 hours. That is classic. Classic as classic gets.
I take my shades off to you, Bret Kepner. I take my shades off. Yes. Wow. That was great. I know everybody's has liked it and enjoyed it. What a wealth of knowledge and great stories, great storyteller, one of the best in drag racing. And Brett, we also hope you get better. I know you are dealing with some issues health-wise, so we hope you keep chugging along and keep doing well, man. Sam,
man,
I'm done.
I like, how do we close out a show after something like that? The comments are rolling in. Guys, I know this was a little bit longer show, but when you have someone like Brett on that has so much knowledge and can just give you insight and stories like he has and just give you all this knowledge, you can't cut it short. So this was one of those episodes, just like many, we wanted to continue rolling in, and he has great words for us, great inspiration, and just telling the history of what drag racing was, what it's become, and what, things have evolved and changed. But it was a great episode. I always like talking. Lee, you've had a full day of talking. I know you're probably sick of sitting there, but what do you got coming up this week, Lee?
Well, I don't know yet. My show, Between the Slicks, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I need to call Quayne Stott and see if I can get him back on and get my, mid-season recap from him with the Southeast Gasser Association. But I know we'll have somebody on Thursday night from the world of drag racing, no matter who they are, because we don't just talk to drivers there, and we will yak it up and get the story from them in their world and their nook in drag racing. I want to say this too, Sam, about the show tonight. I love the juxtaposition of the future of drag racing in Austin Prock and then the statesman like Bret Kepner. That's one reason why I love this episode. It encompasses so much about what has, what is, and what will be. And, man, I hope you and me are doing this for a whole lot longer, too. So take it away. Shut us down, man.
Yes, everybody. I'm Slammin Sam. On my show this week, I will be talking some drag racing I'll be talking circle track as we have a big tour coming up, the Dakota Mod Tour here in the North Dakota area. So we'll be talking to some of the drivers here over the next couple of weeks in the IMCA stock car and modified. So looking forward to that. Again, all the housekeeping. Thank you guys for your emails. If you guys have any emails that you want to send us, you can send them to powerhourcp@gmail.com. You can listen to all these episodes back on all your major podcast forms, and that is under the Power Hour on Apple, Spotify, Anchor, whichever platform you use. You can listen to it or watch it back fully on YouTube. Thanks to Bobby Bennett. Thanks to Bret Kepner for coming on, telling those great stories along with his partner that he brought with him, Ricky Smith. And thanks to Austin for coming on, and congratulations to them. But you know what, guys? It's been a long plane ride. We've been strapped in. The pilot has finally turned off the fasten seatbelt signs and the bridgeway, and the door has been open. You guys, till next time, keep living drag racing, keep spreading the word of drag racing, and we will see you guys here live on the Power Hour next Tuesday. Signing out, I'm Slammin Sam in the Monday Morning Racer. On behalf of Bobby Bennett and Competition Plus, we've had a great show on the Power Hour.